Okay, good evening. Welcome to the Town of Auburn Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for Thursday, December 21st, 2017. So we're going to call the meeting to order at approximately 7 p.m. This meeting is being recorded and broadcasted live by Local Access Programming. And I have to ask before we begin if anyone is recording the meeting this evening. Okay, hearing none, seeing none. If you have any electronic devices, if you could turn them down, please, to silent or vibrate, if you could, please. And also at this time, I'd like to remind the audience and applicants and the town administration and each of the board members to please refrain from asking questions in regards to all matters discussed this evening without first being granted my consent. And the first item on our agenda this evening is an applicant for Longwood Development Corp. requesting a special permit under section 3.2.7.1 and 4.3.5.1 and variances under section 5.4 and 5.3.5.1 for the Auburn zoning bylaws for the construction of a 4,000 square foot industrial use building on property located at 19 Mill Street. This applicant has requested a continuance, is not here this evening. Do I have a motion to open the hearing?
Motion to open?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Also, so do I have a motion to accept the continuation?
Motion to accept continuation?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so this hearing will remain open at the town clerk's office for public comment until such time they reschedule for a future meeting. At this time, we have a 7:10 applicant who we have to wait for since it's only 7 o'clock right now. And I'm going to request that we have a recess until 7:10 and we'll begin again. Do I have a motion for a recess until 7:10?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll be in recess until 7:10. Thank you. Okay, good evening. Welcome back to the Auburn Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for Thursday, December 21st, 2017. Do I have a motion to come out of recess?
Motion.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so a 7:10 hearing. Applicant Nasim Haque, and I apologize if I mispronounce your name, requesting a special permit under section 4.1.7 of the Auburn zoning bylaws to allow for an addition of a dwelling within the flood hazard district on property located at 14 Brook Road, Auburn, Mass, map 17, parcel 69. Do I have a motion to open the hearing?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Sir, the applicant, if you can come over to the lectern, introduce yourself using the microphone, and give us an overview of what you'd like to accomplish. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we go any further, folks, we anticipate a bit of a crowd tonight, and we have a sign-in sheet over there. If you could do that for us, please, while we're going through the hearing, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Hello, good evening, everybody. My name is Nasim Haque. I bought a 14 Brook Road. Nasim Haque, H-A-Q. 14 Brook Road, Auburn. I'm a U.S. citizen. I live in Shrewsbury. I have me, my wife, and my 3 kids. I buy that house so I can fix it and move in. So the building department, the zoning board, they deny my application for extension. So I came here to appeal their decision. You guys can give me a permission. I can make extension to make this house livable because it's not enough room for my family. The stair, if I don't make an extension, is not gonna be, the stairs is not up to code. And the space I have is not enough to my family live in it. So that's why I requested, so you guys can grant it me, allow me to, I can do like 8 feet extension.
Okay.
If you guys have any technical question, my contractor, he's with me here, he can answer better than me.
That's great. If you don't mind, you want to come up and introduce yourself, and we'll have some questions for you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ciro. I work for BBS Construction. I am the contractor in charge to basically what we're trying to accomplish in this on his house is to extend, not really extension, is already existing area. We just want to make a better foundation so we can raise up to the and make an extra rooms for the family, because on the house it has no rooms. The rooms are way too tiny.
Okay.
Okay. And We have all the blueprints,
I saw that, yeah.
and also we went to the zoning plan. We pulled up all the elevations for the float. So we trying to basically by doing making a better foundation, I think we'll solve the problem and we'll be able to build the extra room that they
Okay.
need.
Okay. So I'm going to open it up to the board members for questions. Mr. Cussy, do you have any questions?
Yeah, so this footprint is not staying the same, right? You're gonna add some foundation here?
Yes, I'm gonna add foundation on the 8 feet.
Yeah, there's a jog up the back.
Yep.
Okay. Have you ever done anything in flood control before?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the footprint's only changing this little jog.
That's correct.
That's it. The rest of the foundation's the
Yep,
same.
and then the rest of the foundation was still the same.
I'm good for now.
Okay. Mr. Chicolo?
I would like to ask the town engineer, the commissioner, a couple of questions. First,
Absolutely.
Caleb, have you viewed this property?
I have.
It would appear to me in viewing it that there are multiple things that need to be addressed. What has stood out to you?
I guess there's a couple issues. The driveway for the home is mostly on the neighboring property. I think that's something that would need to get cleaned up. And then I guess my other hesitation is that normally a special permit for floodplain, you should include a site plan that shows, you should show elevations of the high flood, of what's there existing. You should show the flood storage area, and then you should show what you're proposing for an addition and how that's going to impact the storage area of the flood zone.
So will there need to be information in that plan that shows just how water will be directed off the property?
I think it's more so you need to show that you're not reducing the area of the flood zone and you're constructing the property so that any flood wouldn't damage your new addition.
Is there any past history during any flood times with this house that you know of?
Yeah, I can say in the last 10 years there's been floods where there's been 4 feet of water in that area where the road's been underwater.
4 feet of water. I notice on the fence it got big white letters spray painted, flood zone.
Yeah, I think that was the previous owner.
That was the previous owner. Hey, that's all I have. That's all for now, right now.
Okay. Mr. Maron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to continue, and appreciate you gentlemen being here. I'm going to continue the line of questioning through Caleb, if I may. So, in my view of the brief and the plans that have been presented to us, am I correct in saying that we have not received the information relative to essentially the water, the elevations, the flood zone, and how it impacts that specific lot in that area, correct?
I would agree. I think the application is a little bit incomplete for the board to act on something. I'm not against the project, and I don't know that it couldn't happen. I just think the board needs more information to make a qualified judgment.
Okay, no, thank you very much. So, Mr. Chairman, with that submitted, I would redirect, I would recommend that the board redirect the applicant and request that additional information. And I would suggest, I also visited the property. I think it's an ambitious project, but I have no reservations on the betterment of that property whatsoever. But I do think the board, before we act, is needing the receipt of that additional information.
Agreed.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Blaze, do you have any questions?
So I'm just curious, you bought that property, correct, but have not lived there yet? Are you living there now, or no?
No, it's
Can you
not.
step over the microphone, please, sir?
I'm not live there. It's not livable.
When did you purchase it?
I purchased in June.
Okay. Okay, thank you, that's all I have.
Yeah.
Okay. Agreed. I have no further questions or queries because I think all of you had answered my questions initially. But I agree. I think what we need to have here is some additional information that the building inspector pointed out in terms of our high water table, how you plan on managing that. Again, I don't see any of us really opposed to the project per se, and I'm only speaking for myself, but we just have to have that additional information before we can move forward.
Okay. We do have the altitude zone of footage.
If you could give that to the building commissioner.
Okay.
To make sure before we even consider it, if it's something that we can utilize this evening or not. Give him a few minutes to review that.
I'll just share the site plan with the board.
Copy the plot plan.
Is that different than this?
Through the chair, this, I believe this is just the elevation certificate from the Federal Emergency Management Agency confirming that the property is in flood zone.
So it's not providing us with the calculations that you need this evening.
This is,
I don't believe so. This is just a confirmation that the property is in fact in the flood zone.
yeah, that's what we have in our print.
Oh, sure. Yes, we see that.
Yeah.
Existing.
I would agree with the building commissioner. I think that although that has some preliminary information, it's not everything we need. If you want to take a minute and review that. While they're reviewing that, I can go over. So for the Town of Auburn zoning bylaw sections, in 4.17, special permit uses, any use permitted in the underlying district except those listed in section 416 shall be permitted in the floodplain district with the issuance of a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. 4.18, special permit procedures, all floodplain special permit applications shall be accompanied by the following, and this is listed in 4.1.8.1A. A proposed site plan for the entire area shall be developed showing existing proposed buildings, structures, signs, parking spaces, driveway openings, and driveways. The floodplain district boundary, existing and proposed topography at 1 foot intervals with the floodplain district and 2 foot intervals outside of the district. The floodway boundary, all facilities for surface and subsurface water drainage and sewage disposal, and all existing and proposed landscape features. Under 4.1.8.2, the detailed calculations and supporting materials prepared by a registered professional engineer showing the existing and proposed flood storage of the site.
It's right over here, but
And then 780 CMR 8th edition,
comes here.
sections R322.1 general, building and structures. constructed in whole or in part in a flood hazard area, including A or V zones, as established in Table R301.21, or in a coastal dune or an established section of 3224, shall be designated in construction in accordance with the provisions set forth in that sections. So this is what he was attached with the permit application of what we're required. So you're gonna have the floodplain district boundary, existing and proposed topography at 1 foot intervals within the floodplain district and 2 foot intervals outside the district. The floodway boundaries, all facilities for surface and subsurface water drainage and sewage disposal at all existing and proposed landscape features. So I think for the purpose of what we need to move forward with a permit, you really need to look at section 4.1.8.1, and that will provide you with a guideline on what we actually have to have per our zoning bylaws. Do you have a copy of that?
Yep,
Okay,
I got it.
okay.
The question, do you have homeowners insurance on this?
No. I bought it from a bank, so this is paid off when I start the construction, so I can have insurance, but I didn't get insurance yet, no. Home insurance, no.
Yeah, I was just wondering if they would give it to you.
If I may, through the chair, I would just caution the applicant that it would be very difficult to obtain homeowners insurance within the floodplain. You should be cautious about how much money he spends and puts into a house. I would inquire about insurance beforehand.
So if this is like that, the town or the zoning board, and they have to permit it, okay? This house is not livable. No one can buy after me.
And again, I don't think, again, I'm speaking for myself, I can't speak for the other members of the board. I don't think we're opposed to the project. I think we're in favor of the project. We recognize that you want to renovate the home and you want to make it livable, and we agree to that. But we just have conditions in the bylaws that have to be met in terms of understanding how this water is going to be managed, what's the potential damage to the property, that we have a lot of flooding. And it's just a requirement before we have to have that documentation before we can move forward with the permit.
If you guys look at my plan, you can see what I have to do. I need just like the existing house to make the room livable. Me, my 3 kids, and my wife. I wish I knew that. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna buy it. You know, in June, and I'm struggling. I'm working. I have 9-year my son, 8-year, my 3-year-old daughter. And she wanna come to me tonight. I said, oh, we can go Christmas maybe other night. I request to this board to accept my application. What has to be done, I will do it. Otherwise, this house, take it, the town, I can write down now, take it. It's too much for me.
And again, I think we're more than open to working with you, but we just have to have those calculations before.
I have the timeline. I know I'm not gonna put everything in my hand. I try, everything has to be in the time frame. The house stay like there. I can't. My lease is expiring. I have a problem. Maybe I can the street because I'm waiting for the town, for the zoning board to get me the permit so I can fix it. This board, I requested they send someone tomorrow and see if this is livable. I can move tomorrow. I don't need any extension.
I don't have an authority to tell you if the house is livable or not.
No, I'm just saying, for the sake of argument, I'm just saying. But this house is not, my head, I say, okay, I bought this, maybe I spend a little bit money, I make it up and I can move. I wish I knew that the flood zone is my first house. I picked the town of Auburn to come as a resident, but I'm stuck. So I'm like very frustrated. I say if someone come and take that house, I don't need money from them. I pay taxes for it. And I'm not allowed to do something in it,
Well, we're certainly not restricting you from improving the property, which is that we have to have these calculations and measurements
Yeah.
before we can move forward. So what we can do for you is we can put you on the agenda for the next meeting. And in the meantime, you can have a licensed engineer do the calculations, determine everything is okay. And if you have any questions, you can go through the building commissioner, Mr. Moody, and he can guide you through that process, and we can put you on the agenda for the next meeting and hopefully get the permit issued for you. But without that information in front of us, we can't move forward.
Okay, so what, this thing, if they go delay, they cost me too much, and after that I will be unable to build it. I know I'm not gonna go, so something I have to be do it, but next meeting will be next month, right, in January?
Yes, it's always the third Thursday of the month.
Yeah. My lease were there expiring, but anyway, what I can do, maybe I stay in the street. What else, the commissioner, they give to us, what should I do now?
So what we need for you to do is request a continuation until the next hearing. And in the meantime, after you do that and we vote on it, then if that moves forward, you can meet with Building Commissioner Moody, and you can determine what you actually need, and then you can seek out your own engineer to make those calculations for us.
If I may, through the chair, my recommendation would be for the applicant to consult with a licensed engineer, or to have his contractor consult with a licensed engineer, someone who deals with this on a regular basis.
Okay. So if you understood that, then the building commissioner is recommending that you either have yourself or your contractor consult with a licensed engineer, determine the floodplain requirements, get the calculations for us, and then we can move forward at the next hearing. And, I mean, our hands are tied. That's really what we have to do before we can move forward.
Right after me, my question is that this house I bought it, maybe I die tomorrow, my wife, she sell it to someone, he has to do the same problem. Why this a permanent solution for that? Okay, the houses were there, the town has to determine, I don't need that house, the FEMA or whatever, which company, so everyone, the people, they're not gonna get suffer, What I did anything wrong? I buy a house in this town, I don't know, this is the flood zone, and now I'm suffering too much.
And I understand that, and believe if we can work with you to get
What
some relief,
if
we'll do
this
that.
house, if I buy it, if I knew that, if you put it in the website, you put the town, okay, this is the, these houses are belong to the flood zone. Okay, it's not livable, not transferable, not buyable. That will be easy for the people. The people like me, they don't know that feel.
Right.
I need a house, I need a shelter for my kids.
I totally understand, but unfortunately, from the town's perspective, we don't require, they don't disclose that on our behalf. That's something between you and the bank that you purchased it from to disclose that information to you.
I understand that, but maybe I'm wrong, I'm absolutely wrong. But why everyone is suffering? Why one is suffering was the clear law. Okay, this is a flood zone, no extension, no one has to do any business. Write me the paper, I can give to this town that house right now. This is too much for me. I can get maybe, crazy.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Absolutely, please.
And I just want to offer, this delightful gentleman is certainly in a certain situation, but I would just remind that this board has a certain scope.
Yes.
And a certain authority.
Okay.
And so in order for us to help you,
Yes.
What we would need is for you to meet, as recommended, to meet with an engineer, take a look at the bylaw requirements of what needs to be submitted for information, and that would be the best way we could help you.
So
I don't think from a project perspective, I think that your brief outlines what you'd like to do with the property, and as we've seen it, I think that there's likely agreement that we appreciate that you want to better that property. But as far as what our authority is, we would need you to meet with that engineer, provide that information, and then we could provide a response to your request. I think we're going a little bit out of scope, respectfully. I know that you're in a certain situation, and I really do politely find you delightful, and that I feel your pain. But there are a lot of attributes as far as your purchase of the property and the scenario that you find yourself in that, quite frankly, are just out of our control.
No,
So what we'd like to do is help you, and that's what Mr. Chairman is expressing. In order for us to do that, your application needs to support itself. And so what you need to do at this point is to take it back to an engineer and provide that information so that we can help you move forward. Does that make sense?
Thank you, I appreciate that. I know, I understand, I will do that. But this application, the one I submitted is not the required documents is not enough.
I wouldn't suggest that there is information that is absolutely useful. It's incomplete for our review. So as recommended, if you can complete the application with the necessary information that's required, and the best way to do that is to meet with your contractor and an engineer that specializes in that area, and then provide that information, we can move this application forward. It's not wrong, it's incomplete. Does that make sense, Mr.
I
Chairman?
think it does. Well said.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm not gonna waste your more time. Maybe there's a lot of people more on the agenda. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Can you just, before you leave, sir?
Point of order, sir. Yeah.
Yes, could you
Mr. Chairman.
just request a continuation for the January hearing? That's what we need you to do, to request a continuation.
Okay, well, yes,
Okay.
okay.
So the applicant has requested a continuation to the January hearing. Do I have a motion?
So I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman, that we support a continuation for this applicant.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll have you on the agenda for the January meeting. Hopefully that will provide you with enough time to meet with your contractor and engineer, and get the calculations we need, and we'll be able to help you out in the January meeting.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Look
Okay.
forward to seeing you again.
Good luck.
Good luck to you.
I hope I find someone to say.
Okay, that one's done. Okay, next on the agenda, we have a 7:15 applicant Sweb Development USA LLC requesting a special permit under section 3.2.4.0 of the Auburn zoning bylaws for the development of a 6-megawatt solar photovoltaic installation on property located at 430 Rochdale Street, Auburn, Mass., map 37, parcel 7. This is also a continued hearing from beginning in November 16th. Do I have a motion to open the hearing?
Motion open?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Welcome, sir. How are you?
Doing great. Happy holidays, everyone.
So I think we left it last time that you were gonna meet with a couple of the abutters, or at least one of the abutters, and determine if there's anything we could do to sort of smooth things over.
That's right. And we've done that. I just need to get my tech set up. There was a laptop here last time, so I'm just going to
Sure.
just get it. I have a PowerPoint that you guys, I think, will
Okay.
find informative.
Go right ahead. Thank you. And if anybody else has come in later, just to remind you, we anticipate a large audience this evening, so if you could sign in over there if you haven't already, I would appreciate it. And if you have any electronic devices, if you could turn them down for me, please.
Apologies for the delay, everyone. Just going to get this set up. While we're waiting, I'll just introduce myself, Michael Carey from Sweb Development. I'm accompanied tonight by Joanna Hall. She's here from Weston and Sampson, who helped us with the engineering design for this project.
I'm comforted, Mr. Chairman, that the delay wasn't due in part to my exit.
All right, so thanks for coming in, everyone, on this December evening. Yeah, I'm Michael Carey. I'm here with Joanna Hall from Weston and Sampson, and we're here to continue discussion of our proposed solar project, 5.8 megawatt project for 430 Rochdale Street. Just a quick agenda. I'll try to go through the slides quickly and then we can get to questions. We're going to answer a number of questions that were raised last time at the November meeting, namely moving the project northward. We're then going to look at visual and glare analysis and site rendering and potential screening, so we can get a sense of what the project might look like when it comes to fruition. Just as a reminder of where we are, so this highlighted area is a 120-acre parcel, 430 Rochdale Street. This here is High Street. Rochdale Street runs north-south. The interconnection point will be here on Rochdale Street via a line run down High Street. The project will fit more or less into this baseball mitt-shaped field, which is ironically the exact right size for a solar project under the new SMART program. So one of the first questions we had last time we came in was, can we move the project northward to reduce the amount of visual impact it would have for certain neighbors? So I got a few slides on that, so we'll talk about that first. One of the main restrictions in our potential movement northward would be NHESP rare species area, which is here marked in yellow. This is an actual screen grab from our application to the NHESP. We were found to be sufficiently far away. I think it's butterflies. I mean, that's the rumor. Anyway, they didn't tell us exactly what the species was. But this area does limit our potential for a wholesale movement of the entire project northward. There's several reasons why we cannot move the entire parcel north. This is the first and foremost one. Beyond that, we have some grade issues when we move northward as well. The project area where we are now, according to our current plan, is fairly open. There is some sloping topography, but it is steeper and facing northeastern when we get a bit north of the project area. So those are the main reasons why we cannot shift the entire project northward. However, one more thing to mention is that our current layout only calls for 3 acres of tree clearing, and this is around the perimeter of the project area in the west, as well as this small isthmus of trees that splits the 2 fields in half. There's also about 5 acres of clearing of this scrubby brush that's in here. It looks like trees and forest on satellite, but this is actually just second growth. It looks like the stones of the field were dumped into the middle of the fields when it was first made agricultural, and this is a lot of small dogwood and whatnot. However, looking at the topography, talking to the abutter in question, we have found that we actually could move about 1 acre worth of modules northward from really anywhere in the current layout zone into this flatter area that is just north of the current project area. It looks like this field at one time extended farther north than it currently does, in terms of agricultural use. And there's a very flat area through the trees on the northern side of the parcel. You can walk into. It's about 1 acre in size. It's fairly flat, and it's suitable for solar. So in conversations with the abutter in question, we can certainly move 1 acre worth of modules north and put it on that in that section. This would result in some gains in visual mitigation, and it's such a small addition that we feel that perhaps the board could clear our current plan or as is. And this small change could happen when we go into site plan approval, maybe through the planning board or even when we get our building permit. It's only 1 acre of a 120-acre site and a 20-plus acre project area, so it could be deemed a very small change. This would require roughly 2 acres of clearing. That might be on the high end. This clearing would mainly be just to reduce shading on the modules in this area. There'd be a bit more tree clearing than if we left those modules where they are, but it's fairly insubstantial. We're also fortunate up here because of the topography becomes steep so abruptly, and that part of the parcel. The trees aren't as tall. Well, they're as tall, but they're on a lower topography, so they don't create as much shading. So there are some real advantages to this going forward. Again, it's a small modification that could be done, through the planning board and through the building permit process. And SWEB will commit, I'll say on record, to work with the abutter and to determine the optimal relocation, which modules would be best suited to be moved up. I think we've figured it out already, but we will continue to make sure we get a good. We're working closely with them and getting a good, the maximum and optimal result. So that's northern movement. The other thing we looked into was glare analysis. So I've got a few pictures here of glare, previous glare studies that SWEB has seen and been involved in and researched. This image on the top left is actually the Denver airport, which has a 10 megawatt solar project in the airport. They found that glare in such a circumstance has not been a factor. Our company recently permitted a project here on the top right. You can see circled in red, might be a little bit small, but within a kilometer of an airport in Austria. It's on the roof of a shopping center, and yeah, they found that the glare study came back positive, that we weren't interfering with any of their landings and takings off and departures from that airport. We also recently did a glare study on our own facility in Austria. You can see our solar panels. We have several hundred megawatts on the side of our facility that powers our head office. Our abutter next door was concerned about glare, so we planted this row of arborvitae trees to break up any glare that could come his way, and this was deemed sufficient to mitigate any glare that could come off the facility. Here, specifically in Auburn, we recently did a study which we circulated to you folks. This is usually done for airports, but we're more than happy to do it here for your situation. We looked at some particular abutters that were close to the project area. And yeah, you guys have seen the results, but I'll highlight some of them here tonight. OP1, which is 425 Rochdale Street, could potentially see glare from these 2 sectors. Now this glare would happen for a period of 0 to 30 minutes between the hours of 5:30 and 6:15 p.m. within the months of April through August. Now this does not mean 5:30 to 6:15 every day there could be glare. It means that's the window within the year which in width you could see from a second of glare up to 30 minutes at maximum coming from these areas. Now fortunately these areas are fairly shielded by trees, particularly during these months. So we believe that the risk is very minimal here based on the location and based on the tree cover. The other abutter who could potentially see glint is on High Street. And again, very similar situation. The trees that are between the abutter and the project area seem to be more than sufficient to block any potential glare or glint coming off the project. On High Street, these folks have a lot less even potential glare, so it's deemed very low risk. And between the months of May and July, where we see some strong foliage in the trees. So that's glare. We can get some more questions on that here shortly, I'm sure. But in terms of, we're going to get into some site renderings and some photos now that we've doctored up through computer technology to show exactly what we expect the project to look like from certain locations. So these red dots mark the places we stood, or my colleague Sarah stood, to take pictures of the project area. The black lines with the degree symbols on them show the compass orientation of those pictures that we took. So as you can see, we stood on the property of 425 Rochdale Street and tried to get the best views we could from the most commonly stood in places on the property. So So yeah, that's what these pictures are going to represent. First one was taken near the back first floor window of the property. And we can see here that this is a house and this is a barn. Up on the elevation is higher here. So this is looking directly across. We can see power lines running up the side of the picture here. And this is what the view of the fields would look like with solar in it. The yellow blocked off area is the corresponding area where glare could come from, as we saw in the last several slides. So as we can see from this angle, there's a fair amount of trees in the way to break up any glare that could come off the project. And this is more or less what the view would look like from that particular location at this particular time of year. And these pictures were taken in late November. Another picture was taken from just beside the garage, which attaches to the house. Looking across, northward to the field. Again, we can see this particular tree. I think you can see a bit of the power lines here as well that run just north of the house, downhill onto Rochdale Street. There's some poplar trees in the way. Now these trees, as we know, are brittle, but SWEB can also commit to putting screening and additional trees for screening on the abutter's property. I know he's mentioned that you might not want that today, but in the future, if that becomes something that that is requested, then we can commit that we could come in at a future date and put in trees to screen the property. Visual glare and mitigation on this slide. So we're seeing from the top of the driveway as well. Very similar. There's some tree screening of this, that we can see through at this time of year. Glare would come from this area. Similar story to the other pictures. And now from the top of one of the highest points on the property, at the garage, is probably the best view of the site, maybe from anywhere in Auburn, realistically. This area, we're looking straight across Rochdale Street at the project area, and we can see the difference the field would look like. Now this time of year, again, there's no leaves on the trees, so you get your best views. Glare could potentially come from here. However, again, you get a fairly substantial trees in the way, which would be filled in during those particular months. And yeah, this is what we think the project would look like on a late November day from this particular vantage point. So that's visual renderings. To accompany that, we've got several trees that are potential for screening. This is not a comprehensive list of potential tree species, but yeah, this is provided by Weston Sampson and is what has been used on other projects. Depending on the needs of the individual abutter and how their particular vantage point, the particular property aesthetic, what they want to be looking at, we can draw from this list or draw from a wider list if that's what's requested. So, in conclusion, we have gone through the questions that the board and the abutters had last time. In terms of northern movement, we certainly can move and fill that 1 acre section above with modules and relocate modules from elsewhere in the site. In terms of glare analysis, we've looked at glare. The board members have the study. The abutter also has the study, and we think that the risk of glare is quite minimal, mainly due to tree cover. In terms of tree screening, it's most effective on the property. And that can take place now or at a later date. Benefits to the town, we'd be remiss not to mention potential benefits that solar could bring to Auburn. It's a cost-free revenue stream to the town via pilot program. Now this is a payment in lieu of taxes that is quite typical for how solar is taxed and makes community contributions in Massachusetts and elsewhere. We're working out exactly what that payment would look like with the assessor's office, but once we move through permitting, we'll be able to spend some more diligent time on that. It's usually paid on a per megawatt basis. This is a very low impact and quiet use of the lands. In terms of the ways that this residentially zoned property could be used, we feel that this is one of the least impactful. We don't create traffic, we don't create noise. We don't create additional impermeable surfaces through driveways, through parking lots. Our racking system will push a little bit into the ground, but that's about it. We have no other plans for the rest of the site, so the abutters can look at trees and the rest of the 120-acre parcel for a while. Limited visibility for the majority of the community. The folks who will be able to see the project are here tonight. And yeah, we're doing everything we can to mitigate what that small impact actually is. Yeah, this is also a positive contribution to the state's renewable portfolio standard for electrical generation, as well as a chance for Auburn to make a positive contribution to the Clean Energy and Climate Plan for 2020 that Massachusetts has. So yeah, that's our those are our slides, and yeah, I'm sure you guys have lots of questions.
Sure, I'm going to open it up to the members of the board, but before I do that, I just want to say thank you very much for your diligence. Obviously, you put a lot of effort into that presentation, answered a lot of the questions I think that I had already. So I want to thank you for being patient through this process.
Thank you. You guys have been great to work with, to be honest. You guys are a board who knows what you want, and that's a welcome relief after working in a lot of different towns in the US and Canada.
Mr. Cussy?
Yeah, I'm very pleased that you were able to work with Mr. Brooks. I took a ride up to his property and I was looking across, and where you want to move the acre of, to the back is a great idea. Because that was the worst area of sight, to see these, between those two little clumps of bushes. So if you can move that section back, I think we're looking good.
Definitely, yeah. Ron's idea, good idea, definitely.
Yeah, it's good.
Mr. Chicolo?
I too want to reiterate what has previously been said. You've done a very, very good job and worked with us to the positive. I have no questions.
Thank you. Mr. Maron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the risk of being redundant, I want to recognize that this applicant has been extremely thoughtful in his approach, genuine and concerns to the neighbors, and also to the questions that we've asked. And I was part of that inquiry, certainly during the last hearing. And I did read what's been provided previous and leading to this meeting. So I would just thank you for your follow-up and diligence and your willingness to partner, because that's really what you're doing, is recognizing that you're partnering with us, you're partnering with your neighbors. And and you suggested that we may have questions. I think you've been very thorough and very thoughtful. And so I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity, guys.
Ms. Blaze?
All I'm going to say is ditto, I guess. Thank you so very much for working with us and educating us and working with the town and the people of the town. So thank you. No questions.
Okay. Do you have any abutters present that would like to speak? Mr. Brooks, please, sir.
I'll get you the best picture up here.
Yes, I want to thank the board also and Mr. Carey. We walk through this all and we look at a spot where we would probably want to, and we can work closer. He said he would be willing to condition that he will move that acre's worth of panels and also commit to future plantings to up to a 5-year or 10-year period or something like that. And if I'd like to see you could do that and put those conditions on, and I'd be okay.
Sure. So you think all of your questions have been answered and your concerns have been satisfied?
Yes, I see the glare study. I only know that it's whatever he says it's going to be.
Great.
So, just as long as we put the conditions on that they'll move that acre and that he and I can select the area between us.
Okay.
And the condition about future plantings.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks.
Are there any other abutters that would like to speak? Okay, hearing none, seeing none. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Do we have any more individual comments?
None.
None? Okay. I have none further either. So do we have a motion on the, to approve the conditions or deny the conditions based on the application?
So moved.
Which one? I asked either.
to approve
Okay.
their application.
And I think with the conditions that Mr. Brooks had requested, that.
That is correct,
That
yes.
1 plus or minus acre of panels be relocated, and that
Yes.
there is a 5-year agreement on plantings.
As the applicant has stated and affirmed.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve from Mr. Chacolo. Do I have a second?
I would second as stated with the conditions articulated.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve from Mr. Chacolo, a second from Mr. Maron. Mr. Cussy, your vote?
Approve.
Ms. Blades, your vote?
I approve.
And I also approve, so congratulations, good luck.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate your time and effort.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure working with you guys, and we look forward to joining the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy holidays,
Thank you,
everyone.
Mr. Brooks.
Okay. We'll give them a minute to move forward, and then we have a 7:30 PM applicant, Cadent Incorporated, requesting a variance under section 3.7.4 of the Auburn zoning bylaws to allow the installation of a cold storage building, which would be 30 feet by 40 feet, on property located at 35 Sword Street, Auburn, Mass., map 11, parcel 6. This is a continuation from 11/16/17. Is the applicant present? Yes. Sir, if you could approach the lectern, introduce yourself, give us an overview of what you'd like to accomplish, please. So a motion to open the hearing.
Motion open hearing.
My name's
All in favor?
Jeff Bowser,
Aye.
and I'm the general manager of Cadence Solutions on 35 Sword Street in Auburn. What we're trying to accomplish is a Quonset hut-style building that will be not attached but close to our existing building so that we can access it with fork trucks and things of the like. We have a building that's been in our hands since 1968, I believe. We've merged 2 businesses there in the last 10 years, and we've grown the business. We're trying to grow the business additionally, and we're struggling to stay within the boundaries of the current building. In order to do so, we need to add some cold storage so we can bring some inventory of just raw material, steel, some racking to put some stuff in. We use polyester and polyethylene boards, very long for our business, and they're easily stored outside. We have them inside now, and they're taking up a lot of floor space, which we can use for additional manufacturing space. And what we'd like to do is purchase one of these kind of prefab, do-it-yourself Quonset hut-style buildings and put it up right next to the building so that we can bring some stuff outside. Cold storage, solar lighting, no power, no nothing, just storage.
Okay. So I'm just going to open it up to the members of the board. Mr. Cussy?
I
Any
have no
questions?
questions right now.
Okay. Mr. Chacolo?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Directly in the back of your building, I believe I noticed a chain link fence and then storage of materials on the other side of that. Am I correct?
So what we have is, from the street, it goes a little bit of parking, then the building, and then parking, and then a lower lot.
Yes.
Which is some older material. We have some material dumpsters out there. We've recently cleaned out a lot of old stuff that's been back there for much longer ago than I've ever been with the business. But we've cleaned that out in the last 2 months. We've cleaned that lower parking lot out substantially. And then there is a chain link fence to the abutters property.
And where is the positioning of this Quonset-style hut building?
Right up against the back of the building that you can see from Sword Street. So it's in the parking lot right adjacent to the
So it's in
building.
the
right behind-
asphalt area
Correct.
and directly in line with the building?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Maron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for my own clarification, so when you look at the frontage on Sword Street of the building, and you enter in the driveway, and I'll call it for rough, just play along with me for a second, rough, say kind of a horseshoe, enter, exit. So if
Yes.
you enter on the left-hand side and drive all the way around that building and exit on the right,
Sure.
coming back to Sword Street, all of that's your business, correct?
Correct.
That's one single business?
Yes.
And you own that entire footprint?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
If I may, just to clarify a little bit, when you go past the plumbing supply business on Sword Street on the right, you go underneath the bridge.
Yep.
The first driveway on the right-hand side if you drive in there and drive around the back of the building and hug the building, this building will be right there. So they'll be coming off the back of the building right there. Currently, right now, what we're doing is we're parking our two cargo vehicles right there. So we have a flatbed and we have a big 24-foot cube van that we park right up against that building. We're going to move those to the other side of the parking lot, and we're going to put this building right there.
Okay, no, I really appreciate that perspective, because when I viewed the property, I did exactly the opposite, and didn't enter that way, came in the other way, but that gives me good geometry on where that's going to go.
Okay.
So I understand. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chacolo?
Mr. Chairman, well, thank you. Will there be any access into this new building from the old building?
No.
It'll be totally separate?
Correct. We're going to keep a space of about a foot or so, whatever we think makes sense, because my thought is that I want, well, maybe even a little bit more than that, maybe 24 inches, so I can pass a snow shovel through there or throw some ice melt down, just to keep anything that might come off the existing building down in between the two buildings. But it's going to be entirely, completely separate, no entrance, no nothing.
Thank you.
It's essentially just a shed.
Ms. Place?
Yes, that does bring up a little bit of a question there about, so if ice came off or whatever, it seems a little close if ice came down to the other building. Is there an exit right there next to it?
There is not.
There's not, so it's just building to building.
Correct. There's
Okay.
no exit on the back of the building on that side, anywhere near that proximity. What we'll be doing is there are two dumpsters, one dumpster. There's a garage door kind of in the middle of the back of that building that hasn't been used for anything. It used to be, I think way back when, it was a receiving dock. We haven't used that for anything. We use it now just to ventilate in the summer. In the wintertime, it's closed. There's a man door on the opposite side of that, which employees exit into the parking lot, but there's nothing from that all the way to the corner of the building. No exits whatsoever.
Okay. And I'm always concerned about security, so you're not going to have power there or anything, so what are you going to use for security to secure your
We'll
supplies in
probably
there?
padlock it. There will be a pull-down, roll-down garage door. We'll probably padlock it. There's going to be nothing in, honestly, there's going to be nothing in there that anybody could remove by hand. It would have to be fork truck removal, and there's nothing that anybody could use to do anything with anyway.
Okay. Right, that's all I have, thank you.
Okay. So this is going to be an existing parking lot that is currently paved, correct?
Correct.
So you won't be doing excavating and pouring a floor or anything like that in there?
No, we will not.
I'm just trying to get a picture
Yeah.
of what we're going to do. And can you just go over a little bit of what exactly you manufacture and what will be stored in there?
Sure. So Cadence Solutions and Cadence in general, because we're a big publicly traded company, we manufacture products that support the paper making industry. So we don't make paper, but in these giant paper mills, we make products that support paper making. At Solutions in Auburn, we make products that directly impact the paper making process. So as these giant pulp mills are pumping pulp to a paper mill, which are typically adjacent, as the pulp runs across a paper machine, it turns itself into paper through the process, and Cadent makes products that support and enhance that process.
Okay.
What we do in Auburn, we have two main products. One is water management products, so we make products that support the chemical process of paper making, and then we have what we call blades, or doctoring, which is the process of removing the paper from the rolls. As the paper comes across these machines, it needs to go from roll to roll. So Cadent makes the blades that strip the paper off the rolls and transfer it to the next roll.
Okay. So you had mentioned you'd have some racks in there with some steel, some Scotch-Brite type pads on rolls?
Yes.
So there'll be no chemical storage, no
No combustibles,
materials,
nothing at all.
like that?
No, that's very clear. We want to make it clear. We're not going to have anything paper, corrugated, combustible, nothing. We actually, nothing that we make uses combustible material to begin with. And all we're looking to do is store raw materials undercover outside.
Okay. Do we have any abutters present that would like to comment at all? Yes, sir. If you could step up to the microphone, introduce yourself, give us your name and address, and talk about your concerns.
Oh, boy. Hello, my name is Paul Keller. I'm an abutter on two sides of that property. And we were here about 10 to 15 years ago. Everyone I was here with all died since then. I'm 80 years old. And before they paved the parking lot, they paved everything basically to the fence, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
All right, then. And you left that thing alongside the fence where you're supposed to keep the gate open so RHY can plow the snow into that big hole.
I'm not sure about that, sir.
Yeah, you didn't research your stuff right. 80 years I lived down here, so I seen that place was a sand pit. So what you want to do now is put that building where that retention pond is, natural retention pond, where the snow goes in, it melts, it disappears in the ground. You take that retention pond out, you're gonna flood my other piece of land on 42 Rockaway Road.
Excuse me, sir. Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Cole.
That's quite all right.
I was just going to ask if the applicant, if I could request the applicant, excuse me, the abutter, if you could address the board, sir. One, we're having trouble hearing you a little bit.
Okay.
And if you could just address your comments to the board.
All right.
And if we need to bring the applicant into that discussion, we'll do so.
All right. That water is right behind my house in 40 Rockaway Road. It's a swamp. So water from half of that industrial park runs in there. It runs through the swamp, through a big culvert, and down into Leesville Bond. You take that thing out where he wants to build that building, you've got no place to put that snow except against the fence, which they did the last snowstorm. It melts and runs down Gray Moss Road onto my property and floods it. You have no business, no one has any business to flood someone else's property. So the only way you can put anything in there is make a smaller building and keep it up on top, away from that ditch, like that hole down there.
May I?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
Mr. Chairman, and also, may I ask a question of the applicant that might clear up something that I...
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
He's gonna, sir, if you don't mind stepping aside for a minute, he's gonna try to address some of your concerns.
No,
Step to the microphone, please.
Step to the mic.
And you have to address us. You can't address the
I
applicant.
have a question for you. From the way this has been described, you are going nowhere near that retention area.
No.
You are staying, and if I can remember correctly, I would say you're staying 75 to 80 feet away from that retention area.
Probably at least 200 yards.
200 yards, okay. So that you are not in any way affecting a current water runoff situation.
No.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, sir, you're gonna have to just address your concerns through the board, please.
You do not have enough footage to do that. My property on 40 Rockaway Road runs back 265 feet. And I have a tree there with red paint on it. Next to the tree is a stainless steel post, and next to the post is a land boundary marker. And there's no way you can go off that building you want with the footage you're saying and not come on my property.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
Sir, with all due respect, this building, from my viewing of the property and the description the applicant has placed, this building would have to be well within the setback from the boundary lines. Would the applicant care to address the closest point that it will be to the boundary lines?
Sure. I don't have the, well, I have a copy of the plan. I could estimate. Thank you very much. The lower, so just from the back of our building, the first parking lot is 100 feet to a berm to the first parking lot. The second parking lot looks to be another 250 or so.
Down here would be that retention pond we got now.
Okay, so this is where our building is gonna go, right here, right up against our building.
I see
See
that
the
there's
yellow right here?
fusion there, Mr. Chairman.
That's where we're gonna put it, right up against our building.
Well, how
Right here.
far away from this, from the road?
That's not the road, that's the property, this is our driveway right here.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so our trucks come in like this, our employees come in like this. So this is where, this right here is 100 feet. So if you swing this around, that's 100 feet right there. It's gonna go right up against our building. This is Sword Street out here.
Yeah.
Our-
I know, like I lived there all my life. I
Yep.
know exactly what it is.
Sure. So we enter, this is just in from the corner of the building. We'll have a couple of employees parking right here, maybe on the corner. Might leave it blank, because most of our employees park right here. And then we have a grass berm right here, and then we have a lower parking lot down here. So, at a bare minimum to the property line, that building's gonna be a minimum of, I mean, it will be less than the corner of our existing building. Should I say it'll be more?
What do you want to do with this, like retention pond there now?
I don't think we do anything with the retention pond.
Because if you go in there, you're not gonna have any place to put the snow. This last storm, the pile right against the fence.
Mr. Chairman, if
It's
I may?
still there,
I will. Excuse me, gentlemen, I'm sorry, but again, we just have to have the rules of order, that you have to address us, your concerns. So I think what I'm hearing here is that it's not necessarily a concern about the building or the placement, it's more about the snow management, it seems like. So I think if,
Because when you get a heavy rain, see, that's about,
I got it.
12 feet of fill in there.
Anything to
Any water goes in there, doesn't last long, goes right down through and into the swamp and down in the pond. By taking that little thing out, they pile the snow against the fence, and it melts and it comes down way more slow onto my property.
Okay, so I think what we have here, sir, is a couple of different concerns. One is that we are addressing whether or not they can put this 30 by 40 storage building on the property. What you're here to address is a fact that you don't necessarily agree with the snow management. So that's kind of two separate things, and the snow management part of this hearing doesn't really fit into what we're talking about. It's whether or not, based on the request of the applicant and the requirements of the zoning bylaws, if we can actually allow him or Kadant itself to put this 30 by 40 storage building in.
We went through this about 10 to 15 years ago, and the agreement was, they left that gate open in the winter. They plow the snow through the gate, and then when it melts, it disappears, no problem. In periods of heavy rain, if the ground ain't frozen, you might get a foot or more of water in there. And that'll bleed into the swamp, which is about 10 feet away.
If I could?
Yes, please, sir.
Thank you. If you would allow me, I will promise you that we will agree. This is the driveway and this is the corner of the building.
Yeah.
I promise you that we will not put any snow at all in this area at all. I'll leave it blank parking lot.
See, the lower end, right? That's my property. The snow goes in, you have nothing to say about it, because they plow Imperial. They plow it all down, everything comes down that end.
Okay?
And up above here, that gate is supposed to be left open and the snow, RH White pushes all that snow through, then when it melts, you never know what's in.
I would submit to you that I promise that we will put snow, we will leave this entire corner against your property blank.
I don't care about down there. What I care about is snow up here all along your fence. That's bleeding down onto my property.
Okay? We're required to make sure that we put snow, we move the snow out of the parking lot. I can try to put snow here against this side of the parking lot.
They moved it out of the parking lot, right? Plowed it right down, into that hole. They opened there's a gate there. There's a gate.
Mr. Chairman,
We need to.
I think that, excuse me.
No,
I think that what we've got to do is hope that you can work out an amicable solution to neighbors. Walk the area, find out where you feel there should be snow put, find out how the applicant can or cannot accommodate you. But for these purposes, I, for one, don't want to hear any more talk about snow.
Well, you don't want to hear to talk about the snow.
No, because we are here to determine.
When that snow melts, I got the problem with it. I got the.
Then you need to work that out, an amicable solution with the applicant. But right now, we are here and these people are waiting to decide on whether the applicant can put up a 30 by 40 building, which has nothing to do with snow, respectfully.
Through the chair, if I may.
Yeah.
Any variance, whether, if it was approved, would also have to go through site plan approval, and snow storage would be addressed during,
part of that.
at that meeting.
I was hoping they were gonna resolve this, but I agree. I think we're gonna move forward.
Don't put the snow.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I also have any variance, but I am going to propose that a variance is not needed in this situation. This is not a dwelling, and it is not a principal use structure expressly defined under prohibited uses. This is a storage as maintained and large storage shed. If need be, a special permit. I don't even see a need for that, to tell you the truth, but if needs be and we feel that we would want to cover ourselves with that, then we can vote on a special permit.
Okay.
I do not see the need for a variance here.
Okay. Gentlemen, excuse me. I'm sorry. I really can't allow you to continue to discuss amongst yourselves. Can you have a seat for a minute, please? And then if we have any further discussion, we'll call you back up.
Sure.
Okay, so Mr. Chicolo has brought forth a opinion that he is not sure if this variance is required in this situation, or in fact if it's a special permit. So let's clarify that first before we move forward with anything else. Mr. Chicolo, could you explain your concerns?
Under prohibited uses, they are applying for a variance under section 374. Okay, and under 374, prohibited uses, okay, are the construction of more than one dwelling, this is not a dwelling, or principal use structure on a single lot is expressly prohibited, directly from the bylaws. This is not a principal use structure, nor is it a dwelling.
Okay. So I'm going to defer
I do
to,
not believe it should be prohibited.
okay. Building Commissioner Moody.
Through the chair, if the board finds that it is not a principal use structure, then I think the path of permitting would be a modification to the site plan. I do have a couple issues with the, I'm not gonna say it's impossible, but to construct a 1,200 square foot building without any excavation, I'd be curious to see how they complete that, so I just advise the applicant. And the other issue is the proximity to the main structure. There may need to be some separation there for fire and building codes.
Sure, yeah, I thought that
Greater
was-
than 2 feet. But if the board feels that it's not a principal use structure and an accessory use, then I would suggest that the planning board, with the modification of the site plan, is what would be required.
I would say that that would be a solution that the applicant may want to look into, or proceed just as is. But the requirements for a variance are more restrictive than for a special permit. The steel building that you're talking about, those are put up all over the country all the time. I know there's one right down on Southbridge Street that we voted on, and it was storing actually gravel. So that, and there's no excavation that was done there, although Mr. Moody brings up a good point, that should be something that be investigated. But I, for one, would leave that choice to you, so that you have that choice of pursuing that avenue and no variance. The more restrictive is the variance, You can pursue that or pursue a permit that meets the criteria that Mr. Moody has said. With that, it will all be your choice.
Mr. Maron?
Mr. Chairman, I am in agreement. I think that, as stated, based on the use of this structure that's being proposed, I don't believe that we're looking at a variance application, in my estimation. And I also had questions I would defer to the building commissioner, but I would take a look at this under the guise of a special permit. I also appreciate the halt of the last discussions and whereby I think we've got two things to accomplish, and perhaps we can give neighbors an opportunity to work together through snow removal and storm management. And I would hope that they could solve that locally. But for this application and for the application that the applicant's suggesting, I see this, in my view, as the bylaws written, as a special permit.
Okay. Ms. Blaze, any comment on that?
No, I agree.
Okay.
Through the chair, if I may, just to clarify, I wouldn't suggest a special permit's needed, but site plan modification, and I would just caution the board that 1,200 feet is a very large shed, and although it may not be a principal use structure today, it certainly could be in the future. That's my only comment.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The 1,200 square foot shed should not be an issue. The variance, if we granted a variance tonight, the size of that shed would not change. If we granted a variance tonight, the proximity to the other building wouldn't change. So that a site plan review, I'm all for more eyes looking at something, please understand that. But a site plan review, if granted the variance, we're saying, yes, he can put the shed up the size that he wants, 30 by 40. We're also saying, yes, in the area he can put it. Now, the site plan review may change things, I thoroughly agree. But we're not changing anything by saying special permit, no special permit, or variance, no variance. We're not changing the facts, and the facts are it's 1,200 square feet.
Respectfully, there is no special permit on the table. Nothing's required for a special permit. The fact that I bring up the 1,200 square feet is that my interpretation of the bylaw is 2 structures are not permitted on a single lot. Now, accessory sheds are permitted. I would just caution the size of this building, and 1,200 square feet is a very large shed. And a future use of the property, somebody could go in and use this 1,200 square foot building for a principal use structure. So by not requiring the variance, you're permitting
We can't
2 structures on a
future like that, though. We can't say what's going to happen in the future, and there is no electricity in this building, am I correct? Right. There is no electricity. But then we get into the minutia of defining how big is a shed? How big is an extra large shed? Going by the printed word that we have right here, sure, it could change in the revision, but going by the printed word we have right here, he's well within the boundaries.
So, but what I see here is, if I could just kind of clarify both sides, is that I agree that maybe not necessarily the letter of the law as far as a variance, but I also see the building commissioner's intent to protect the interests of the town moving forward in the future. Hypothetically speaking, this building is sold down the road, they have to come back before us, they have to renew the variance, that way we can ensure that that building is being used as it currently is intended, so there's no future modifications that we're not aware of. I see both sides of it, but I personally think, as the chair, that we continue moving forward in terms of the variance with the, with the understanding that it's protecting the town's interest in the future.
Should we do that and protect the town's interests in the future, what we're doing is saying, okay, what we have here is 5 crystal balls, and we're looking at the future. Doesn't matter what he says right now. That's wrong. That, in my opinion, is wrong. We have to take him, this is what I want, and this is the variance I'm applying for. He was sticking to the letter of the law until I opened my big mouth and said, you know, I don't believe he needs a variance. So for us to vote on a variance tonight, when I truly believe one isn't needed, if I abstain from that, that would only hurt the applicant.
And again, I see both sides
And I
of
don't
it.
want to do that. I'm trying to work with him.
Okay.
No, a variance is permanent, correct?
That's correct. The variance would transfer with the property,
Special permit.
and it would allow the applicant to use the building for any use in the future.
Yeah, Thank you, Mr. Cussy. If I can follow up on that just for a second, and I'm happy to be corrected, Caleb, but just for academic sake then, so that I fully understand this, my apprehension in a variance is exactly that. It's because of the permanency, and it carries from owner to owner. It stays with the property. Why is a special permit off the table? Just
There's no special permit required to build.
because it doesn't, okay, so it doesn't.
It would just be a modification to the site plan.
Okay, so it's not under the, okay, understood. So, because that's why I was leaning one versus the other.
Right.
I think my apprehension in alignment with Mr. Chacolo is that the permanency of a variance. I also understand your balance, Mr. Chairman, of looking at this, long-term and both sides. At the end of the argument, I, for one, would like to find the solution that moves this application forward in favor of this applicant.
And I agree.
Able to construct. And so just so I make it clear, I, for one, whatever we determine this, I'd like to fall back on site plan as necessary, but see whatever we need to navigate to make sure this applicant is successful.
And I agree. I have no problem with the applicant's request. I think it's the right thing to do. I think administratively, we need to make sure that we're moving forward in the right direction. So as a board, how do we follow that guideline and get to where we need to be?
Mr. Chairman, if we do say that the best thing to help this applicant will be to grant a variance tonight, if we do proceed down that path, and that's strictly because that's the shortest point to conclusion to help the applicant. The water issue that required the retention pond that I'm going to call it a pond, retention area that you have,
I don't think we have it. I don't think it's on our property. I think it might be on his property. And that may be the case, I'm not certain.
okay.
All I know is the extent of our fence, and it's the best I can say.
But that particular issue, do we feel that we can use that as the first step in discussing the topology of the lot?
I mean, honestly, it's not been brought up as part of the application. This is not a water management issue. We're not dealing with any kind of aquifer issues.
No, but we're dealing with a variance, so what I'm doing is searching for
I get it.
the key that it'll undo the lock to the variance.
You can't send water onto other people's property,
No.
so, I mean, that's not even an issue. If it is an issue, you can't send the water on other people's property, that's all there is to it. If there's a substantial amount, you have to remove that snow. You can't just pile it up there and let it melt and let the water run on his property. You either remove it or move it to another area of the lot.
Right.
So that would
Again,
be...
we're getting away from the scope of the application. That's what my
So who
concern.
would be in charge of overseeing water being sent onto someone else's lot? I mean, we're looking at the building, and the big issue here seems to be the water.
Right.
We all agree the building's fine, right?
Yes.
It's the water, so
I'm just
that's
searching
kind
for
of
that
like,
key.
that's kind of out of our hands.
Well, I think, yeah, that is, absolutely, that's what I mean. I think
Yeah.
we're going away, we're straying from the original intent of the application here.
Right.
The water management issue is secondary, that the abutter can come to the town hall and file a formal complaint.
Correct.
Which can be addressed through the building commissioner's office.
That's
Through the chair, if I may. If the board decides, which they have the ability to do, that they disagree with my decision on the variance, they have the ability to render a decision saying the variance isn't required. At that point, the applicant would then need to apply to the planning board for a site plan modification to build his building. At that point, planning board could look at stormwater and any increased runoff or any existing runoff that's negatively affecting any abutters.
The planning board will have to weigh in no matter what, right?
Absolutely.
No matter what.
Even on the
Absolutely.
variance, they'll have to weigh in? No, just on.
If a variance is issued, anytime a variance or special permit is issued, site plan approval is also required.
So I think we're good.
So either way, the applicant's going to have to appear before the planning board.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, so with respect to the building commissioner, because I don't take lightly us overturning a determination that you would make on an application.
I don't take it personally, trust me.
I know you don't, and I appreciate that, but I absolutely respect your expertise. And so in that vein, your conviction, your approach to a variance was based on size and longevity and perpetual use of this?
I think it comes down to what my interpretation of the bylaw is, and that is that the bylaw, I believe, was written to prohibit people from putting more than one structure on a lot unless they had a regional mall or common driveways, which aren't really common in Auburn. So that's my interpretation. Somebody else could interpret it differently.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Chairman, I would make two suggestions. If we don't have any additional questions for either the abutter or the applicant, I would close that portion of the hearing, and then I would entertain moving in the direction of not calling it a variance, but asking the applicant, or suggesting that the applicant would reapply in the manner that the building commissioner had suggested.
All right, so let's do this first. I have a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that part is done. We'll have no more discussion from the floor. So it is the opinion of at least two of the board members that we have no need for a variance in this particular situation. They prefer it to be moved towards a planning board review, site plan approval, stormwater management, that type of thing in front of the planning board.
That's going to be step 2 no matter what.
No matter what it is, correct.
Just making it
So I
step
think-
1.
So I think what we're doing is we're eliminating our oversight on this particular application based on the opinion of a couple of board members, which I completely respect your opinions. And then we can move forward with the applicant to just basically cut us out of it and bring it to the planning board.
To rescind the application and go through the planning board.
Through the chair, we'd need a motion to overturn the building commissioner's decision for the requirement of a variance. And then a second and a vote, if that's the direction the board wished to take.
Okay. All right, so I think we're all pretty well aware of what has been discussed. So is there a motion regarding this application?
I want to word it correctly, so I would make a motion to
Has the state to overturn the building?
overturn the building commissioner's decision and have this, and rescind the application.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would second that, and also adding the point of seconding for discussion if any other board member would like to throw in to discuss this a bit further.
Yeah, I would, why do we want to change it to a special permit instead of
We're
a
not
variance?
changing it to a special.
No, we're eliminating ourselves from this application and we're moving it forward to the planning board based on the interpretation of the bylaw from a couple of members of the board who see it as not necessary to have a variance.
Oh, okay, I thought we were going to go
Yeah,
special permit.
not going special
All right.
permit. No, Mr. Cussy, thanks for the clarification. What I'm suggesting, and I believe Mr. Cole is suggesting, is that from a variance perspective, that this wouldn't be necessary for a variance. That's in contrary to originally what Caleb had suggested, that this would require a variance. And there lies a second for any additional discussion.
Ms. Blaze, how do you feel about this?
Step 2 would have been.
I don't mean to, I'm just listening to these gentlemen, I
Yeah.
wasn't turning my back on you, but it's like that.
I don't know, I take
Like the planning
a
board
lot of,
Okay, I get you. I thought we were,
what the building commissioner has to offer us, in his opinion. Certainly more versed in these things than I am. I feel comfortable going to site plan, for that. I definitely want emergency departments to take a look at it too. But I think I agree that we don't really need a variance at this point
Okay,
for this.
okay. We've closed the public hearing, sir. So there's no more comments from the floor. This is just discussion amongst the board members. So,
And again, Mr. Chairman, I've seconded it for discussion, so.
right, for
our
discussion. Right, okay. So I think you've heard the opinions of the board members, and obviously I refrained as the chair, so do we have an end of discussion? Do we want to move forward with a motion on this particular application? How you want to handle it?
I would move forward with
Yeah,
the
I'm
motion.
comfortable to move forward with the vote. To vote.
Okay?
Yeah.
So one thing I would like to add as a condition is because the applicant has, I think, done a really good presentation. I don't see really an issue with this. Personally, as the chair, I would like to see that any and all fees associated with this are waived so they could be moved forward to the application process for the planning board.
I think that's
I
a
don't
good
think we need
idea.
to apply any fees
Yeah, it's a
if
good
we
idea.
decide that we do not want to move forward with this particular application,
I
in
think
fairness.
Very good idea.
You're absolutely right.
All right, so can we clarify our motion before we move forward with the vote?
Motion to overturn the building, an amendment to my previous motion to include return of all fees associated with the current application.
Okay, so what we are voting on here is a motion to overturn the building commissioner's application requirement for a variance to move forward to the planning board for site plan approval, water management type of things, and also that we would waive and remove all fees associated with it that could be applied to the planning board applications.
Yes.
Okay,
And I would so second.
and you have a second, you are a first, you are a second. Mr. Cussy?
Approve.
Ms.
I
Blaze? And I agree, okay. So, just to clarify, the zoning board, after much discussion, has determined that it's probably best suited to go to the planning board for this. I have absolutely full confidence in the members of the planning board. They do a fantastic job, and I'm sure that they will give as much thought to this project as we have in determining what the best place to move forward is. So with that being said, could I have a motion to close this hearing completely?
Motion to close the hearing.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Okay, so, Caleb will be in touch with you, and he'll figure out how to handle that one. So we're gonna move forward because the 8:00 PM applicant, Leicester Street Solar LLC, requested a continuation, so we're gonna move to the 8:15.
Nope, 7:30.
Ooh, where am I at? Okay, yeah. Kate, we did 7:45 applicant. Leonard and Judith King requested a special permit under section 9.3.1.12, of the Auburn zoning bylaws to allow an accessory apartment on property located at 289 Packagug Street, Auburn, Mass. Map 26, parcel 63. Is the applicant present? Hi, how are you? Could you please go over to the lectern, introduce yourself, name and address, and then go over what you'd like to accomplish? Also, ladies and gentlemen, if any of you have come in late and you haven't signed in over there yet, if you could do that, please, I'd appreciate it. Sir?
I'm Leonard King. I live at 289 Packagug Street. I've been living in Auburn for 51 years, and I want to put on an accessory apartment to the house that we're living in now. The reason being is that right now I have my single parent daughter living with us with her two girls, and then my my other daughter, she has 3 children that she has to move out of her house by February 1st, and she has no place to go. So we decided that we could put on this addition, and she could move in there with her family, and this is the reason why I want to put the addition on.
Okay. That's onward. Mr. Cussy, you have any questions of the applicant?
No, he's within 700 square feet, so
Right.
no questions.
Slightly larger.
Okay, Mr. Cussy? Excuse me, I already did that. Mr. Chicolo? Getting a little tired.
Hi there. I go by your house more times per day because I'm leaving my house than I care to admit. But it says 285. Front, like, railing.
No, that's the house next, right after mine. Mine's 289. It's 289, it's right on the mailbox, right by the driveway.
And how far from the road are you set back?
300 feet.
Okay, so that's the fairly new house that's there.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
We've been there 11 years. At the new house.
Huh?
51 years, the house in front. I split up the land,
And you've been in that house in the back how long?
11 years.
Wow, that was a fast 11 years.
It did.
Wow. Thank you.
Mr. Maron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here. Also, thank you, I had the similar question of exactly which house we were talking about.
Okay.
I did not make the long, well, I wouldn't say long, but I didn't make the drive directly into your lot, but I didn't see the plan on the mailbox, and so I couldn't find it a bit. I appreciate the brief. Mr. Chairman, I don't have any specific questions for this applicant, and as Ms. Cussy pointed out, this is within our 700 square feet guideline for an accessory apartment. I would be interested in hearing any comments from abutters.
Yes.
But I don't have any further questions for this gentleman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Place?
Yeah, so it's just slightly larger than what's required, so I don't have a problem with that, but how many people exactly are going to be living there?
Right now, it's me and my wife, my daughter and her 2 girls,
Yeah,
and then my other daughter has 3 children. So my other daughter, which is a single
so
mother,
4 adults and 5 children will be living in this house.
3 adults.
So you and your wife and your 2 daughters,
Oh, yeah, okay, 4. 4
and then there are 2 children and the 3 children, so
5 children.
that's a lot of people in that house.
It's a big house.
Okay, how big is the house now?
The house now is 3 bedrooms,
How many square feet?
almost about 2,000 square feet.
So you'd be going at 27, 29?
Yeah. Still, how many bathrooms? That's a lot of girls.
2 bathrooms. And if I put the addition on, there'll be a 3rd bathroom.
So you're looking to just house your daughter and her 2 children in this accessory apartment?
Yeah.
You're looking to house your 1 daughter and her 2 children in this
No, the 1 daughter and the 3 children.
and the 3 children in the accessory apartment?
Yes.
This is just an
How many cars can park in your driveway?
Well, there'll be 2 cars in the garage, and then there'll be 2 cars in the driveway.
This is the kitchen right here, right?
Yeah, it's in the great.
They're all school-aged kids? How old are the kids?
3 of them are 9 years old, a 12-year-old, and a 14-year-old.
All right, that's a start.
I would like to hear from abutters. I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
Do we have any abutters present that would like to speak on this application? Hearing none, seeing none. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, seeing no abutters, colleagues to my left had just brought up a couple of questions, so may I just clarify?
Please.
Exactly. So, sir, the addition, the space that's drawn is new. That includes 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, and a kitchen
Yes,
off the great room?
yes.
Okay, so that is a kitchen.
I didn't hear you?
No, that is a kitchen, right? That alcove off the great room?
Yes.
Is that one open, long room?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. They're not, I promise you, they're not trick questions, sir. No, and Mr. Chairman, I'll just clarify. The reason why I was asking was because the question was raised on whether or not it was an addition or a true accessory apartment based on the amenities, but clarifying that there is, in fact, a bathroom and a kitchen, as said on the plans. It's truly an accessory apartment.
Correct, I agree. Thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you.
Any other further comments or questions from the board? None. Okay. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Do I have a motion on the application?
Mr. Chairman, please.
Go ahead.
I would make a motion to approve.
I would second that motion with the notation of relief from the 700 square foot requirement. To
Agreed.
allow the 729.
Okay. Mr. Cussy, how do you vote?
I'll approve.
Ms. Blades, how do you vote?
I approve as long as like septic and all that is,
Are we town water and sewer?
Town water, town sewage.
Okay.
okay. Thank you, I approve.
Okay, and I vote to approve, so congratulations, sir, good luck.
Thank you.
Caleb, I'm sure will be in contact with you regarding your permits and any further documentation.
Okay, thank you. Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
You as well.
Yes, Merry Christmas.
All right, so now our 8 o'clock applicant has been continued, the Leicester Street Solar Project. So we're gonna move on to the 8:15.
Oh, that's a good point.
Applicant Lori Lazara, DBA Euphoria Day Spa, requesting a special permit under section 8.2.2 of the Auburn zoning bylaws to allow the operation of a day spa on property located at 305 Oxford Street, Auburn, Mass., map 32, parcel 126. Is the applicant present?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, hi, you're already up there. Okay. Could you introduce yourself and give us an overview of what you'd like to accomplish, please?
Yes, my name is Lori Lazara. I have had my business in Auburn for probably about 12 years. I've been in my current location for 8. I'm looking to purchase this property, not so much to expand my business, but to own the space that I've been renting for a long time. I currently have myself I'm an esthetician. I have one massage therapist. I have an electrologist. I'm looking to add one esthetician. We are a by appointment business. There is no hair. There will be no nails. So the foot traffic that we have is typically someone is there, our clients are there between 60 and 90 minutes. Sometimes there's an overlap. But on average, there probably wouldn't be more than 6 cars parked at the same time. They're never all leaving at the same time. And I'm looking to probably put in, I won't know until I get a carpenter in there, how many treatment rooms I can get in there. I'd like to get 5, I need 4. It's a little bit bigger than what I have now. We currently have I'm on Southbridge Street now, where we have very busy parking lot, but we only have 4 parking spaces. And we make that work. You know, we park a little bit on the side of the building, but on a whole, we don't need a lot of parking. This actually has, I think, 20 spaces, which probably max we'd ever occupy, I think, is 10. But an average is probably more like 6. And a typical day is often, like today, I was there from 9 to 4. My massage therapist was there from 11 to 8. We each have 1 client at a time. So,
Okay. So just to clarify, you're looking to purchase the building, correct?
yes.
Okay. Mr. Cussy, you have any questions of the applicant?
Yeah, you said, how many people would be there at a time? Like,
Employees and clients included?
Every day's a little bit different. To give you a max, if everyone that works for me is there at the same time, right now there would be 4 of us and we would each have a client. So that could be 8. It's rare that we're all there at the same time, but it could be 8.
okay, good.
Mr. Chicolo?
Hi there. Do you currently have a purchase and sale
Yes.
on the building? You do?
Yes.
That's the only question I had.
Okay.
That was easy. Mr. Maron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any direct questions for the applicant. I will say that we have viewed this property on a couple of different occasions.
Indeed we have.
For a couple of different opportunities. And I know that as I walk through some of the, I won't say challenges, but some of the, as we've navigated some of the concerns that we've had based on location, traffic, egress, and some of the applicants that have come before us, I would suggest that, by appointment business like this well suits this property. And so I, for one, would very much like to see this property move forward with a permanent resident and a thriving business. So I don't have any direct questions for you, ma'am, so thank you for being here.
Thank you.
But I think we've well navigated this lot.
Indeed we have, several times.
Thank you, sir.
Please.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is a good fit for this property. And the word on the street that you're very good at what you do. So, no, I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay. And again, not to reiterate too much, but, I know that the selling of the property for the current owner has kind of been somewhat of a hardship. We've worked through several different times where we could not come to a conclusion and determine how to best suit this property. I really think, in my humble opinion, that it's probably the best fit for the neighborhood. But I'm going to also ask if there are any abutters present who would like to speak on behalf of this property or the application. And hearing none, seeing none. Okay, so we have a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, do I have a motion on the application?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve.
Okay,
Second that? Oh,
yeah, that's okay.
I'm second.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve from Mr. Maron, a second from Mr. Cussy. Do we have any requirements or special conditions at all?
I would say, if I may, just that it stays this type of business, not adding the hair, the nails, the things like that that she discussed.
Okay, we can add that. So with that being said, Mr. Chacolo, how do you vote?
What was the requirement?
Just that it doesn't modify the business in terms of like going into hair, nails, because she had mentioned that's not one of the things they do. So if they keep it in the scope of the current business.
Okay. Affirmative.
Okay. Ms. Blaze?
I approve.
And I do approve as well, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you for being here.
All right, so we are running a little late, and I appreciate all of your patience. Hopefully, you might have learned a little bit about what the zoning board does while you were sitting out there. So our 8:30 PM applicant, Central One Federal Credit Union, requesting a variance under section 6.7.1 and 5.4 of the Auburn zoning bylaws to construct a member call center on property located at 20 and 30 Elmwood Street, Auburn, Mass, map 6, parcel 157 and 158. Is the applicant present? Folks, if
Yes.
you're coming in now, just before we get moving, if you haven't signed in over here yet, if you could please do so. And if you have any electronic devices that might make some noise, if you could turn them down for me. Okay. I'll give you a minute to set up and then we'll open the hearing. All right. You got a good sharp pen over there ready for all these comments?
10:30?
Probably.
This is 20 to 30. Oh, boy.
Okay, that's this one here. Okay, so while the applicant is setting up their presentation over here, I just want to kind of caution the audience that how we do things is, as you saw the format this evening, we're going to allow the applicant to speak. They're going to do their full presentation. I'm going to present it to the members of the board for their concerns and questions. And the third step will be to open it up to the abutters for comments or concerns. Okay, so I recognize that there's quite a few people here. We're going to try to get to everyone. Hopefully, if you do have any concerns and they have already been reiterated, that you would kind of just accept the fact that somebody's already presented your questions or concerns, and then we can move on. If somebody else has anything different, then obviously we'd like you to come up and express yourself. Okay, so do I have a motion to open the hearing?
Motion open?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Okay, the applicants are clearly present. Gentlemen, if you could just introduce yourselves, your title, position.
Absolutely.
For the record, and then go forward with your each individual sections of the presentation.
Great. Through you, Mr. Chair, my name is Brian Beaton. I'm the attorney for Central One, the applicant this evening. This is James Tatro, who's a civil engineer. Greg O'Connor is a project architect, and I'll allow the individuals from Central One to introduce themselves tonight.
Okay.
So we're here this evening through Mr. Chair, members of the board, members here in attendance and at home. We're here this evening pursuant to the application that was filed for zoning relief as part of the proposed member center that Central One is proposing to construct along Southbridge Street and Elmwood Street. As you know, undoubtedly, Central One currently maintains a branch location along Southbridge Street. We were before this board and the planning board some time ago pursuant to that project. We're back this evening to present this project, which abuts that current location along Southbridge Street. As the proposed use is not a use that's going to be open to the public, just as a point of clarification in terms of what the member center is and what it's going to be. It's for employees only. It is, again, not open to the public, much like that existing branch location is. It will be staffed. We'll get into the program a little bit later as to the specifics of what the use is, but I wanted to, just as a point of clarification, point out that it is not a call center that's going to be open 24 hours a day or anything like that. Normal business hours, again, not open to the public, and it's part of the Central One operation. As far as the site itself, as you can see, it's a rather uniquely shaped lot, rather triangular and shaped, tapering at certain points, and it is that shape and also some of the existing topography which is the reason for the relief that we have applied for. In your application packet, you'll see that we applied for 4 variances. Those variances are, in fact, if I could just quickly go through them, and I guess I should step back for a moment. We had an abutters meeting on Tuesday night. I recognize that many of the people that were nice enough to come out Tuesday night are here tonight. We're going to, in addition to giving an overview of the project, we're going to try and be responsive to some of the questions that were raised and some of the points that were made as well. So hopefully, as we move through this evening, we can address some things that were asked as well, because we do appreciate that folks have come back tonight and we know they have questions. So to the degree that we can do that, we're going to attempt to do that. But to get back to the relief, we're requesting a variance for the front yard setback along Elmwood Street. Now, the requirement is for 40 feet. The building is actually going to be 40 feet. In an abundance of caution, there's a 2-foot overhang off the building, and we're requesting that relief to address the overhang itself. We're treating it as though we're part of the building. So that's the reason why we're actually requesting that relief from behind on Elmwood Street. And the idea here is to push the building as close to Southbridge Street, actually closer to Southbridge Street than the existing home that's there now. And so the relief from the front yard setback along Southbridge Street is for 22 feet. Again, taking into consideration that 2-foot overhang off the building itself. We just thought it would be a more conservative approach to include that as actually part of the building itself. And again, the 22 feet of relief is designed such that we can again pull the building closer to Southbridge Street, closer than the existing home. The other variance that we applied for relates to section 6.71, which deals with pavement and parking location and proximity to setbacks. So we're asking for 9 feet of relief. Again, the idea being keep it as close to Southbridge Street as possible. And then the final relief that we are requesting relates to the lot regularity factor. We're asking for 0.072 of relief with respect to the lot regularity factor. With regards to what we're proposing for landscaping, 31 trees, 131 shrubs, stormwater, which is always an issue that folks have questions about. It's actually going to be a net decrease of stormwater for the site due to the proposed treatment system that we're going to hopefully install in the parking area. Again, just to tie it back to the relief and the variance, obviously with the variance, there's hardship requirements. In this instance, and we're going to get into some of the mechanics of the site layout itself, it is again the topography and the shape of this lot that's really driving the relief that we're requesting and also the layout itself. So you see more information about that in the application package itself. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to our engineer. He'll touch on some of the other issues related to the site, and then we'll try and move along as quickly as we can.
Thank you.
Sure. Again, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, James Tatro, no relation.
Do you spell it the same way?
No, I have the full French spelling.
Oh, see, that's
a tough way.
Okay.
As Mr. Beaton said, we're asking for a relief in a couple of instances from setback. also from the normal requirement of being 10 feet off a property line with a parking space. And in this particular instance where we're asking for the relief, our parking spaces are actually still going to be farther away from the curb of Southbridge Street than the parking spaces next to the ATM that comply with this, because it's an oddity of the right-of-way of the state highway layout in this area that actually gets wider away from the existing curb line as you go north towards Worcester here. So where next to the parking spaces next to the ATM, the curb is just 5 to 6 feet from the right-of-way limit, over where we're asking for the relief to be just where we're proposing to be just a couple feet off of the right-of-way. It's actually 23 feet. So we are asking for a variance from that requirement, but in actual, the way it will lay out and the way it will look in the field will be actually, these spaces will be farther from the curb than the ones that next to the ATM that actually comply. And just as a quick, to quickly address the other variance that we're requesting, which is from the regularity factor. The parcel as it is laid out is, the regularity factor is usually attempting to address people trying to draw crazy lot lines to squeeze out one more lot. And in this instance, we actually have the simplest possible lot line configuration here. We simply cut across, as you would be looking at this building from Elmwood Street, to the left of it, a straight line from Southbridge Street to Elmwood Street. And yet, because this parcel is so thin with so much frontage, the regularity factor, the 16 P over A squared, 16A squared over, 16A over P squared, excuse me, gets 0.328 as the number that you get from that, and where the minimum required is 0.4. It's really impossible on this property to come out with a regularity factor of 0.4. And that is, again, basis of our hardship for this unusual piece of land, because we've got two front setbacks back to each other in a way that you usually don't see. A corner lot would have the two streets 90 degrees opposite each other, or 90 degrees away from each other, whereas here they're really front to back, 180 degrees. So just as a quick more description of the property again, this is 68,116 square feet. It's at the corner of Southbridge and Elmwood Streets. The property the project as it is proposed to be constructed would have an entrance-only access in that area closer to the intersection. We would have near the building a two-way access onto Elmwood Street. And this was driven by the fire department's feedback from the development coordinating group, how they wanted things to be set up, and it actually just makes perfect sense. And the way that this property is going to be served by utilities, just quickly, there's an existing sewer connection from the house out to Southbridge Street. We're going to utilize that. We've done a flow test on water pressure in Elmwood Street already. That was a few months back, which showed adequate pressure for the sprinkler fire service to the building. And the drainage on this site is going to all be directed towards the north end of the property. We did soil tests at 5 locations on this property, and once you got, I'm going to just go over there again. In these locations, once you got towards the north third of this property, you got into the very sandy, gravelly soil that the soil maps were telling us we'd get actually over much more of it. And what we're going to do is collect both the roof runoff from the building, all of the runoff from the parking area, and we're going to direct it through first a stormwater filtration unit, then into chambers in the ground, and we included in our filing drainage reports showing that even in the 100-year storm, those chambers and the stone around them, that is going to be sufficient volume to capture and contain, while it's infiltrating, the stormwater from that parking area and the building. So we're not making any connection to the drainage system in Route 12 because we don't want to if we don't have to, and because Mass DOT is extremely difficult to deal with now in matters of drainage. And I know there was part of the discussion I was not able to attend the meeting with the abutters the other night, but I know part of the discussion was a question of why was Southbridge Street not used as the access instead of Elmwood Street? And the answer is that the grade in Southbridge Street varies from 495, 496, 497, and that this site in the middle of it is over elevation 510. And this is, obviously the difference varies from spot to spot, but going off of the curb line of Southbridge Street into the middle of this site involves rising some 14 feet or more in some instances, and it's simply not really feasible grading-wise to do that and to make the drainage work at the same time. We would like to have, it was actually our first choice, but it's just not a feasible thing. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Greg O'Connor, the project architect, to discuss the building itself.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Mr. Chairman, Greg O'Connor, project architect for this particular site. James kind of touched on a lot of the things that we contemplated in the beginning of the design process. One is we wanted to take every element of the building we possibly could and push it closer to Southbridge Street. We were trying to respect the neighborhood which existed across the street. So we've pushed the building as close as we think we could to Southbridge Street and still have a reasonable setback. And what we were trying to work within was the fact that if we typically had a front and rear to this site, in this zone, we'd have a 40-foot front setback and a 20-foot rear setback. So we basically work towards having the wall of our building for our front on Elmwood Street at basically 40 feet, and the wall for the rear of our building being Southbridge Street at 20 feet. So that's kind of how we arrived at the footprint that we are presenting tonight. As far as the use of the building, it's predominantly office space. It's going to be used as not really just a call center as it's written up in the presentation that the town put out. It's more of a support center. There'll be departments like mortgage processing, so you'll have the credit union employees in here that are just processing the applications for mortgages, things like that. So it's an employee-only facility with kind of back-of-house operations. Also, because we have the slope site, we wanted to keep the building low on the residential side. That's the two-story side. As you move over towards Southbridge Street, the building starts to come up out of the ground a little bit more because of the grade drop. We are not quite a third floor out of the ground, but it's probably 3/4 of a floor that's out of the ground by the time you get to Southbridge Street. And in the area where we are in the ground, basically on the Elmwood Street side of the property, there's going to be a storage section in the building because the credit union does have needs where they have to store certain things for periods of time, and that's going to be used for their storage location. They presently pay for off-site storage. This way they can combine it in with this facility. And the folks that work here would most likely be the people that would access those records, so it'll all be on site. In terms of the look of the building, we're trying to match some of the design elements that we've got in the branch right now, try to combine this thing and make it all look uniform, kind of make a nice complex out of the whole project. The materials are going to be similar, the colors will be similar, and we're trying to do this little roof overhang similar to what we have on the branch, so that making this whole thing kind of a monolithic sort of a look. The other thing we got some questions on from neighbors the other day were the construction, the schedule, the hours, the parking for contractors, things like that. And we would work with the general contractor to make sure that the way the project is planned in terms of construction, that they would work their way into the site, so they would basically create their parking on the site as they go. We would not allow contractors to be parked on the street. I'm sure you guys wouldn't allow it either, but we would not allow that to happen. We would make sure that's part of the contract with whoever our general contractor becomes. And typical hours that we'd be working would most likely be the normal construction hours, but if there were a need to, shift that hour later or whatever, we've done that plenty of times with contractors before, and we can certainly do that again. The only time that we would really be doing any work that would be in the street is we do have to make a couple of utility connections, so obviously at that time there's going to be a period where we have to, but that's going to be limited to matters of days, not months of construction like the project. So I think at that point, I think that pretty much summarizes the building pieces of the project. I think if we can maybe turn this over to questions, if anybody has any questions, we can start that now.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Cussy?
Yeah, so how many people are gonna be in here during the day?
The facility has a 10-year strategic plan when this was developed to max out at 100 employees, and it's a one-shift operation. It's not a multiple shift operation. It's going to be going round the clock or anything like that. It's basically Monday through Friday. There are some Saturday hours also.
So 100 people.
Yeah, in the beginning, when this facility opens, it's going to be about 40 people. And then it will ramp up over the years to projected 10 years to 100 people.
Okay. Another question is snow removal. Where are we going to go with the snow? Do we have any?
Sure. Kind of continuing on that conversation of how many employees will be there. In the beginning, where we only have 40 people starting out, the center area of the parking lot will actually be taking some parking spaces for snow storage, because we won't need all those parking spaces right out of the gate. So that'll be accomplished there. As the facility grows over the years and you get closer to kind of the 10-year plan, eventually we know that when we get to that point, snow will have to be trucked off site, and that is something that's done at the credit union's corporate office in Shrewsbury now, because they've maxed out with number of employees in the facility and parking there, so they truck it off.
In the Southbridge side, Southbridge Street side is going to be 20 feet from the road, correct?
Yeah, actually a little more. James probably has some exact dimensions.
In regard to, you're talking about the parking spaces?
No, the building itself.
Oh, the building. Yes,
Okay.
20 feet with 21 feet, I think, and change with a 2-foot overhang, and we're asking for a couple of feet, for 22 feet of relief, if I remember correctly. But the building wall itself is projected to be 21 feet from the right-of-way line of Southbridge Street, yes.
I'm good for now.
Mr. Chicolo?
Hi. Is this a call center strictly for your operations? Are you going to be taking calls for other people?
It's
Other
all
businesses?
No, it's only calls for the credit union, for Central One.
So that many people?
It's not just call center either, because it's folks that are going to be taking mortgages and processing mortgages. There's probably like 5 different departments that will eventually, operations people that will be in here. It's not literally all call center. That was kind of misleading how that was written up in the information that went out, because call center is just a piece of kind of the back of house operation, and it's not a 24 hours a day, 7 days a week call center. It's basically people starting at 7 in the morning and working till about 7 at night, Monday to Friday, and some half-day hours on Saturday.
So you are not contracting with anybody?
It's not like Verizon is contracting with us to do calls in here. It's literally Central One.
The entrance that you have, if I understood, the entrance on Elmwood Street, excuse me, that is right on a corner that is extremely, I go up that road probably 20 times a week. That's an extremely dangerous corner. And right after that corner, you have a rise that you cannot see over onto the other side to see what's coming. Not to mention the fact that that road is narrow. Thank God it's recently, up at that point, it was recently, maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, repaved. Okay, but still, it's narrow. Safety, I don't know what you can do to help with the safety factor. But coming off Southbridge Street, people turn off of Southbridge Street when they can. When the traffic is coming the other way and they're crossing over, they give it the gun, me included. And to immediately find any sort of a backup in that area with 2 cars, 3 cars waiting to get in that parking lot, it's going to be a real dangerous situation. Now, I don't know what you've done to address that, or can you speak to it?
Yes. Yeah, sure.
Sir, I think actually the location of the entrance-only access in that area is actually the best possible place to have this, because of what you're talking about, it being a bit of a tough corner and a rise beyond that. Those vehicles coming to the site and entering are immediately taken off of Elmwood Street. They're not going to go all the way up and around that corner. They're not going to go to that rise and dip. They're going to immediately come off of, they've only been driven on Elmwood Street 75 to 100 feet, and they're going to veer off to the right into this parking lot. So I think it's actually the best thing to help avoid exacerbating what you're talking about.
When you take a right off of that road, okay, anybody that's going to take a right off of that road, I guess we're all guilty of swinging left to go right. And coming over that hill the other way, okay, many a time I've had to slow down, and thank God there was a road on the other side I could inch over to. But if there's any cars waiting to get in that lot, people coming off of Southbridge Street are going to hit a dangerous spot.
Well, one of the things that it's clearly labeled on the plan is that the curb that people would actually be turning against or immediately adjacent to is a 40-foot radius. After the initial meeting with the development coordinating group and getting feedback from the fire department, they demanded that if we do this, we've got to make sure that a fire truck can make that turn. So you're going to have a 40-foot radius, inside radius of the pavement there. Then you've got a 24-foot wide stretch of pavement. Just because it's one way, we did not narrow it. It's a 24-foot wide aisle, the entire length of this parking lot. And in fact, actually, we made it wider right next to the building. So it's really going to be about as easy a turn in as is possible. And we appreciate the issue of the concern about the traffic safety in this area. I really don't think we could make this much better to have it be easy for somebody to turn off.
Has there been any kind of or have you done any kind of a study on traffic count at the time of morning? We'll say, I think 7 o'clock was referenced as a time that you would have people starting 7 to 7, you said? Is there been any kind of demographics put forth?
It's a staggered start. So we have, say, from 7 to 10, people are coming in the morning. And the same thing happens on the tail end of the day, maybe starting at like 3:30 in the afternoon. People start to leave, and they'll leave up until 7. So it's not like we have 50 cars lined up to come in, 50 cars lined up to leave.
That's all for now, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Maron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, I'd like to start my comments by just thanking you for doing business in Auburn. My first question is, do you own this lot now completely? Okay. So I know that...
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I know that when we were discussing, not referencing it for any particular reason on this application, but your previous application that added the drive-through turn, there was some discussion referencing the house. And at that point in time, the house that's existing now that you own on that property, that that was going to stay. So is the plan now that that house will be removed and that this will be constructed instead?
Yes, the house is to be removed.
Okay. And, thank you. And so, and that house is vacant now, right? It has been since that construction?
That's correct.
Okay.
And again, just for everyone's reference, I think Greg mentioned this, but if you're thinking of the position of the building, the existing house footprint, it would be overlapped by the proposed building. The front of the existing house is a little closer to Elmwood Street than the new building will be, and the new building will extend further back than the existing house.
Okay, thanks for articulating that, because in my mind, that's where I had that footprint, is that it's not a direct overlay on footprint to block, but it's in that vicinity where that house comes out, this goes in, and then the rest is developed for parking. I know that's an overgeneralization.
But that's correct, yes.
Okay. No, thank you for answering those primary questions. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hold any additional questions after we hear from abutters.
Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Ms. Place?
It's a very ambitious strategic plan, but then it's a big building to put there. What exactly departments are you going to be having in there?
All operations, which is basically mortgage processing, consumer loans, just processing your loans.
Yeah.
None of business on commercial operations. And then, currently we have 18 people in our call center, handling calls from our members. So the call center could be up also.
So if somebody was...
We currently have 113 employees right now in the whole credit union.
Yeah.
That's including our branches.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, the people that...
I'm sorry, I didn't realize
Sorry.
that your answer was going to be that long. If you wouldn't mind approaching the microphone.
Sorry.
Just to reiterate, so there's a few departments in there, mostly loan operations and a call center. Currently, our call center is manned by 18 employees. We anticipate moving those people over. And as the credit union grows, that would probably increase. The operations, loan operations, mortgage operations, consumer loans, and member business loans. I was stating that we currently have 113 employees with the credit union, and that's manning our branches and our current headquarters in Shrewsbury. So to grow by another 100 people is, as you say, pretty aggressive. And that's why we want to say this is a 10-year plan. We want to make sure that the building we build would be able to house us should we be able to grow that aggressively.
So you had no time anticipate any members coming into that building for closing your loans or meeting with loan officers or anything like that?
There may be some people meeting, but that's not going to be where loans are applications are taken.
Okay, that'd be more in the branch?
Yes, all the branches.
Okay, thank you. No other questions at this time. I'd like to hear from the abutters. A few of them, anyway.
So I'd just like to make a couple of comments before I turn it over and we open the floor up to the abutters here. I just noticed in the rendition that you have here, and you mentioned that it's kind of a, not quite a third story, and that's facing Southbridge Street. And if I'm looking at this correctly, that would be, so from right to left would be heading north? Is that correct?
Yes, if you're looking at this bottom rendering.
Yes, yes.
This is coming up Southbridge Street, heading towards Worcester. This is the view.
Right, so heading towards Worcester. Okay.
I don't know.
You know, I think the concern here, and I'm going to wait, obviously, and probably get confirmation on this, but there is absolutely no way, even if you just to shift, so if the entrance was one way from Elmwood Street as it currently exists, there would be no way to even bring it out to Southbridge Street for an exit? I mean, just based on the slope of the land on that rendering, I know that's not to scale and accurate, but...
The other problem besides just the grades is dealing with drainage with Southbridge, if you make a connection to Southbridge Street. We specifically did a deep observation hole right behind the back corner of the building to try and determine where groundwater is in that location, to see how far down we could put the building, and also to see, at the time, to see would we find soils there that would support us infiltrating the roof runoff there, so we didn't have to send it to the infiltration structure at the north of the parking area, and maybe we could make that smaller. And what we found was groundwater only a few feet, seasonal high groundwater only a few feet down And to the extent that you really aren't going to be able to get functional infiltration of runoff there, and there's no pipe connection to the state highway right now. And if you've dealt with the wonderful Mass DOT folks, they now have as their standard policy that you cannot connect to our drainage system unless you show that you have absolutely no other possible option. And frankly, this layout is the other option.
Right.
And we would inevitably, if we made a road connection to Southbridge Street, we would have to make some kind of drainage connection there. And the feedback, never mind the difficulty that I think there is in doing it, but we would not really be able to satisfy Mass DOT about drainage.
Okay. All right, so if there's no other questions from the members of the board, I'm going to open it up to the abutters. So do we happen to have any abutters here that would like to speak on this?
We go front to back.
Yeah. So why don't we do that? I agree. Let's go front to back. Let's keep it organized and civil. And if you, again...
Time limit?
Yeah, we'll probably work on a time limit. I think, to be fair, let's start the first round with like 3 minutes, I think, if that's okay. And if we need more, then that's certainly okay. We'll modify it. But in the interest of time, let me find my... Each. No, 3 minutes for all of you. Yeah,
You can
3
talk-
minutes each.
Like an auctioneer.
All right, so I'll get my timer going. So if we could start from front to back, just address us through the chair. If you hear repetitive concerns, then I think we've already addressed them like we mentioned. And just make sure you give your name, address, and just be clear. So, okay, who wants to start? Right up in the front.
My name is Kathleen Legg. I live at 33 Field Street, and I am a resident of Auburn for 30-plus years, and I also bank at Central Federal Credit Union, and I like the bank. And I go through this intersection a minimum of 4 times a day, sometimes 10. And it's a very bad intersection. And it's the easiest way to get to 290. However, if you want to get onto 146 or get onto the highway going toward Boston, you're going to go over the hill. Now, when these 100 people discover that, they're going to be driving up into the neighborhoods, as well as this bad intersection. So my concerns are that it's too big of a building on too small of a space with too many parking spaces. The other night when we went to the abutters meeting at the bank, one of the representatives of the bank said that they had in fact asked the state if they could put an entrance onto Southbridge Street, and the state said no. And they couldn't do another curb cut. And I understand that the bank has 3 now. So I can kind of understand that they don't want to do another one. Also, where the existing buildings are, the land is less flat than it is in this part, and that enters and exits onto Southbridge Street because there's a retaining wall in the back. So they made it flat, put a wall in the back, and go out onto Southbridge Street, which, you could work around that if you wanted to. But the state said no, apparently. That's what they told us the other night. Another concern I have is that on the sign out in front of the credit union, it says Central One Credit Union, and then it also says WF Financial Services and Oak Tree Insurance Company. And they are linked to the Central Federal Credit Union. So I'm assuming that they're going to be doing business in this member center that members can't go into. And there's a a great deal of congestion in that area already because Atlas is across the street and Polar Beverage has a lot of trucks coming and going. The other night, when I was trying to get to the bank for the abutters meeting, I sat at the light at Herbie's on Southbridge Street for 4 complete light cycles. I live right near there. There's so many trucks and so much traffic. And you're right, people just whip right up Elmwood Street because they have to make the turn. That turn is so sharp that I have heard the fire trucks have a very difficult time making the corner on the road. And there's a bus stop. At the bottom of that street, the corner of Southbridge and Elmwood, at about 8 o'clock in the morning, there's children. Now, even if the bus stop got moved, it's going to have to be someplace in that area because the kids are going to keep living there. So I want to say 2 other things. Thank you very much to everybody on the zoning board. I know it's a lot of work and it's a lot of detail, and I really appreciate your service. Also, I love the bank. I'm not happy about this. I think it's a bad idea. I hope you redo it. But thank you for being in Auburn and bringing your business here. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna actually, I kind of modified this a little bit. I'm gonna go about 4 minutes a person. I think that's where the lady was, and she got her point across pretty well, so I think I'm gonna increase it to 4 minutes per person. Who's next? Please, sir.
My name is David Legg, and I also live at 33 Field Street. But my wife Kathleen and I also own another piece of property directly across the street from Field at 36. And so our line of sight as we look out our front window is directly towards the bank right down at the foot of the hill. And a number of years ago, I not only lived here in Auburn, but I also worked in Auburn. So I traveled Southbridge Street very, very frequently. When we'd go to the bottom at Elmwood and then travel to the other end. And there are a number of places where people can be confused about what's going on at intersections. Is the vehicle in front of you turning right, or are they turning left? And I've had multiple experiences in which people misunderstanding which direction the vehicle in front of them was turning, leading to an accident. The first one I experienced was at the other end of Southbridge Street. In that case, no one was really hurt, but the gentleman that struck my vehicle lost his job. He worked for Mass Electric and had to encounter Southbridge Street every day himself too, and perhaps he lost that job in part because of that. But several years later, I was leaving Elmwood on Southbridge. It was in the evening at a time when there wasn't a whole lot of traffic. But as I was approaching the intersection, I heard screaming tires and saw right in front of me, only 20 or 30 feet away, a van that was making a wide right, which they had to do to negotiate that very, very, very tight intersection. The vehicle behind them failed to observe that and was trying to pass them on the inside. That vehicle reacted as it made contact with the van, shot directly across the mouth of Elton, right in front of me at fairly high speed, and wound up sort of making a crash stop in the yard. Pretty much where that school bus waits, I would say. And that's a yard, there's a business there and a little bit of a parking lot from that business. Now when I approach that intersection, I tend to give a little extra space for the people approaching so that they can take some of that turn in my lane. Not really a good way to be negotiating these intersections with a lot more traffic moving in that area, many more people trying to negotiate that same thing. Another thing, and this is in the photo that I sent you with the letter, I don't know if you folks had a chance to print it out, is that directly at the point of that intersection is a guy wire installed by Mass Electric, now National Grid, which makes it more difficult for the plows in the town to push snow flat or away from that corner. So when you've got heavy snow and it builds up, you have a serious visibility problem right at that intersection. So certainly I think bringing additional traffic into that intersection is a real problem. Speeds are high too. It's posted 45 within a short distance that way. Coming from Worcester, there are no speed limit signs through that industrial travel area. So that is a big concern that I have about this project and that intersection and having that become less safe for everyone. We have seen more and more people using Elmwood as a shortcut because it's a diagonal and traveling at pretty high speeds on Elmwood itself where there are no sidewalks. Okay. And again, that's a safety issue for them. One final thing is this area now is treed, and a number of those trees are high. And the minute you drive 100 yards up, you've got very nice trees on one side. On the other side, we have a house that was built in the 1830s. The minute you come up into that area, you get a sense that you've left the rest of the world and you're in a pleasant residential space. Tall trees. The bank has said they want to be a good neighbor. Good neighbors in our neighborhood keep some of their trees. They don't take them all down and plant new ones. You know? So if you had less parking here, a friendlier, greener approach from the bank, more consistent for safety, more consistent for environmental friendliness, as many of their members, National Grid retirees like myself, would be concerned and interested. I think you'd be a better neighbor all around if you could keep some of those trees and not necessarily have 100 counting the other parking that you've got, you're going to wind up with about 120 parking spaces. All of your employees are going to be able to park at this facility when the bank is closed. But a walkway through the trees, and a way that people that in the neighborhood can come off, and a smaller footprint in terms of the parking, and also to preserve that sense of the neighborhood, some divisions. As I've been driving around the streets in recent weeks, my routes that I travel for my work are very often this same kind of highway, 40 miles an hour, mixed residential, commercial, many businesses, even storage garage facilities, places that are steel cut buildings. They still have left some trees along the edge to be a friendlier neighbor. And I really appreciate that. If the bank would do the same, I'd happy to be continue as a member and maybe bump into some of your employees while they're walking in our streets. We do have good level streets, quiet streets in behind that can be a nice place for your employees to join us. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time and attention. And I want to wish you all the best of the holidays, although it's not time to be thinking about that. It's with the folks.
Okay. Who's next? Yes, sir?
Good evening. My name is Tom Kaz. I live at 18 Eaton Ave, so I'm not a direct abutment, but I do actually have a safety concern, not so much about the entrance, but the exit, specifically during the winter months. I know, despite the DOT's best efforts, that road is best described as treacherous, both up and down, when covered with even a thin film of slush and snow and whatnot. And as pointed out, it is quite narrow now. With the accumulation of ice and snow that builds up during the wintertime, it becomes even worse with no place really to go. My concern is, coming out of that location, it's going to be a fairly slow-moving vehicle. If there's somebody coming, either gunning it to get up the hill because it's a bit slippery, or coming down with a slight loss of control, if there's a slow-moving vehicle coming out of that lot or moving into it, they're going to become an obstruction that's not necessarily going to be immediately visible, or necessarily something that they're concerned with at that point in time. So while I do realize that the lower lot, or the lower entrance is a concern, I have more concern with that upper lot where if you get a garbage truck coming through, a bus, if they lose any loss of control, that's going to be a massive strike zone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so folks, we know that we have some traffic concerns. We know that we want something that's more blended into the neighborhood. Does anybody else have anything they want to add that's somewhat different to those concerns? Ma'am?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and the board. My name is Lisa St. John. I live at 25 Elmwood Street. Let me show you where I live. Right there. So my family bought the house in 1959. I was born there in 1967, and I bought it in 1994. My father tried to buy the land that the family named the Morrises didn't own. The Morrises owned the Wonder Bar, they owned the White House, they owned right up to the end of one of my driveways where 21 Elmwood starts.
Mm-hmm.
So my father wanted to buy the land in front to the corner, right to there, so that nobody would ever build on it. He was told, don't worry, it's not a buildable lot. Nobody can build there. He was gonna buy it for $1 and pay taxes to the town on it. They wouldn't let him. Then we find it's going up for auction, and one of my neighbors went to the auction and was told it's not a buildable lot. How are they building on it now? How is my front yard becoming a building that looks like that? This entrance is across from my driveway. The road isn't that wide. When two cars are coming down, they have to slow down to pass each other. When I'm out shoveling or mowing my lawn, I'm like this because they go 55 anyway down that hill. If anyone drives it, you sir, you drive the road, people drive like crazy up and down the road. When I slow down to turn into my driveway, which is tricky, if I'm coming down Elmwood Street, my driveway has a slight bump to it, I have to almost stop to turn into it. So how am I gonna do that when there's more traffic from this driveway coming at me and a road that, are they gonna widen the road for us so they can put this in there? Are they gonna put all the trees on Elmwood Street? No, they're gonna have traffic. When I first started to drive, my father brought me purposely on Southbridge Street to take a left turn onto Elmwood. He's like, Lisa, when you get to the bottom of Elmwood to turn right, I'm sorry, not a left, a right. Stop dead before you make that turn and watch, because cars come down that hill and they are on your side of the road because it's a tricky turn. You've already heard about the traffic. I won't go any further on that. But as far as the fact that this building is going to be my front yard now, that's crazy. I mean, from a non-buildable lot to the Morrises selling their house to now there were trees that blocked our view of Atlas. There's no trees there. They took the trees out already, and they didn't mow, they didn't do anything with that land all summer. It was like a jungle. There were mice, more mice in my house than I had. I called the Board of Health about it. Nothing was done. So now they're gonna build this and have these parking lots or whatever, I mean, the parking spaces for however many people. What are they gonna do about the widening of the road, the snow? I live right across from this, where this entrance is gonna be. And 21 is here, 19 is here. My house was built in 1899. There was the 1830 house, there was what 19 is what was the carriage house, there was my house, and a house up the street. I mean, that was a nice little neighborhood. Yeah, it's built up over the years, but to have an unbuildable lot that's shaped like a triangle, and there's a hill, and they can't put the parking or the entrance on the side of the hill, too bad. You know, if you want to do this, pay the extra money and do it so that you're on the business side of the road, not the neighborhood side. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? Yeah, we'll just keep going down the road this way, sir.
Mr. Chairman and the board. My name is Diping Yang. I live in the Victorian house at 55 Elmwood Street. The house was built in 1899, and we treasure the house. And we're on the hillside, and we look down. And I don't drive a car. I walk down the street every day to work, and walk back. So far, on the way back, I probably meet maybe 1 or 2 cars on that quarter-mile walk. Now, all of a sudden, it's going to be 100 cars. And I always walk down to this area, and walking in, I always see a dangerous turn from here. And then when you if you want to make a turn to the Southbridge Street, it's also pretty tricky because the truck's coming out from that distribution center. And you know, I thought this was zoned for highway business, and the highway is on the other side. You know, it happens to be zoned because I guess it's a single lot. Otherwise, you know, the Elmwood Street is completely residential. Just that particular section happens to be so narrow that there's nothing on the Elmwood side. And if it's a highway business zoned, it should be accessed from highway, not from the residential side. And I concur with a lot of other comments already made, so I'm not going to repeat those.
Thank you.
Okay, who's next?
My name is Jeffrey Jazz, and I live right here on Willow Street. I have a couple of concerns. Number one.
Can you speak to the microphone, please, sir?
Yeah. So this is the entrance. Is this correct? Right here. That's it.
This is entrance, and this is 2A, but this is it.
Okay, fine. So you say that eventually you want to be able to accommodate 100 cars, 100 employees, 100 cars. At the time being now, you're looking at 40 to 50 approximately. If you look at this analytically here, you got 40 cars coming out this way, turning left, there's no street light here. They're all going to be backed up, and they're going to start taking the shortcut. Right down Willow Street. This is where I live, right here. There's no sidewalks. There's children. There's elderly people. And people have pets that live on.
Do you use the microphone? I'm sorry, so just so the folks at home can hear you.
Well, I just wanted to point out exactly where we were. But anyway, that street's not going to be able to accommodate that. And I know if I was in that traffic jam, and I was waiting to get out onto Southbridge Street where there's no traffic light, I'd probably take that shortcut too, which brings you directly over 1 block to Jerome, where you could turn left and go out to Southbridge. So I have concerns about excessive traffic on Willis Street. And I also have concerns because I make that sharp turn probably a half a dozen times a day when I leave my yard. I have a 2013 Toyota pickup, and when I make that turn, I go into the other lane. It's virtually impossible. And no disrespect meant, but if you tell me a fire engine can make that turn, I find that hard to believe. And my last issue is, you're saying that the elevation change is one of the major reasons why the exit and entrance has to be here on Elmwood Street. I feel that is something that could be, you know, it's like this woman said, too bad. Make the cut and redesign the drainage system so that they can tie it into the street on Southbridge. It looks to me like they're trying to cut corners and save money and by putting the entrance in this way. So I don't have a problem with them building the building. I think it's a great idea. As a matter of fact, I welcome that. However, my concern is that entrance and exit right there across from Willis Street where I live. I hope they do put the building up there. I'd like to see it there. I really don't have a problem with that. I'm not happy with the egress and the entrance where it's located, and I'd like to see that changed. And I think if they spent the money and made the cut in that elevation change, they could come up with a redesigned system and tie that drainage into the street on Southbridge. You know, I'm not going to buy that, but no disrespect meant. But I mean, I know how that goes. I've been in construction 30 years. So anyway, I wanted to point those things out, and I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, who's next, please?
Hello, I'm Sharon Young. I live at 55 Elmwood Street. I'm married to the handsome young guy there, David Young. Another issue that we haven't talked about, which I think is very important, is the problem of light and noise pollution that are going to be caused by this building. Taking down all the, first of all, the building itself is going to, you're going to light the parking lot. It's going to put light into the houses across the street. It's also trees down. The building is going to, we're no longer going to be blocking off a lot of the light and noise that comes from the distribution depot across the street and the noise from the trains. So I feel that this is going to be another problem that is again going to be detrimental to our neighborhood. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Who's next?
Hi, Maureen Dubois. I'm at 15 and 19 Southbridge and 68 Elmwood. I know traffic has been discussed, but the traffic goes beyond just what we've talked. We did meet the other night with the bank, and I want to applaud them, number one, for reaching out to us and offering to be willing to work with us. That has never happened before, so I do want to commend them for that. We did discuss that entrance, and they did appear to be pretty receptive. I think it was, I can't speak for them, but it appeared to me as though it were an eye-opener to them that they did not realize the condition of that corner and the amount of traffic. The traffic issue goes far beyond just that corner. I have been screaming at this town. I have gone to the town, I have gone to the state, I have gone to Polar, and I get nowhere. I'm titled the witch because I'm the one that's front and center to it all. So if I want to give you all a little bit of history, years ago, the stretch from the Worcester line out to Auburn was a 30-mile-an-hour zone, and it didn't change to 40 miles an hour until you got out to about where the credit union is now. I petitioned the state many times because the speed limit sign actually sat on the corner of Elmwood and Southbridge. And I had petitioned them because of the numerous accidents at Jerome and Southbridge and Elmwood and Southbridge. And I said, can you please push that speed limit sign back, because if you don't slow down before you get to Elmwood, then it's too late. The road bottlenecks. The credit union right now is at the widest point of the road. As soon, where they're proposing to come into is now the road is bottlenecking. And now you come right down to a very narrow stretch between Elmwood and Jerome. The other thing the state did at the same time, well, so they moved the speed limit sign back, but they upped it from 30 miles an hour to 40. At the same time, it used to be a solid double yellow line that ran right from the city of Worcester out to about where the credit union was now. That meant you couldn't pass. They again changed that to a broken yellow line. Enter Polar with their trucks. That road is too narrow. I have gone to the town, I have met with the town, I have met with the state. I tried to meet with Polar. These people are gracious. They want to work with us. What I got from Polar was, oh, well, you know, I got my place down the Cape and, you know, the noise and everything. I get one of those little machines, you know, that makes the sounds of the waves, and I sleep real good at night. That's the response I got from Polar. These people at least are willing to work with us. If this is going to go through, this is going to take a lot of effort on the part of a lot of people. Polar needs to be involved. Atlas needs to be involved. The credit union needs to be involved. The state needs to be involved. The railroad needs to be involved. You can't put that volume of traffic. Their traffic is going to enter, is going to dump out right where Polar is coming and going. You can't continue to increase that volume of traffic in that little area under the current conditions. I have said it before, and I will say it again. Somebody is going to die. And it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And if we continue to do this, it's going to be sooner rather than later. I personally would like to reach out to Paula again. I'm going to try because, as you know, I'm just wrapping up a big project of my own. I just spent an awful lot of money and an awful lot of time on my property. My to-do list is to reach out to Paula and Atlas again. The railroad is now under new ownership. They have done wonders if you have traveled Hope Ave. They fixed that whole nightmare of crossing the railroad tracks, and they, I believe, are working their way toward the Polar. They dumped a big pile of stone out there. So obviously, I think this is an opportunity that if this is to move forward, then I've said it before and I'll say it again, we need to get all the parties involved at the table so that we can understand the business aspect. I'm sure the credit union, I could give them a history that they're probably not aware of, as well as all these other people. They can't understand, and it's not an insult, but they're clueless. They don't know. They don't live there. So they don't know what we deal with on a daily basis. And the final one comes down to the town. The town needs to get on board. I can't keep coming to the selectmen and having them sit there with their Polar bottles of water and say, oh, guess what's going on? Oh, truck's gonna get hit by a train. Guess what? Truck gets hit by a train. And it's just, the town can't continue to ignore this. And if you and the planning board are gonna allow this to go through, then the town needs to step up. We need to petition the state and we need to make some changes. And if that means getting them to somehow get their curb cut and get their entrance, or if their engineers can work something out so that they can come and go on Southbridge Street, all the better. But this, and I thought they were pretty receptive the other night, at least that's the impression I walked away with, that they would rethink that entrance down there at the corner of Elmwood Street. But this is way beyond just Central One. The town needs to step up and all the other parties need to come on board. This is a public safety issue and we are failing. Public safety and quality of life, and it needs to change. It's been far too long.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else?
Thank you. My name is Dawn Watson. I live at 52 Elmwood Street, and I'm coming from this from a parent point of view. We moved into our house 12 years ago. My youngest son was 4 years old. He's gone through the Auburn school system. He's currently a sophomore and he's 16. We do not do buses right now. There is a bus that stops at the bottom of the street as well as at the top of the street. He walks home from school. When he's got energy, he goes up Hampton Street. When he's lazy, he walks down Southbridge Street, turns up Elmwood to come up to our house. You can see our house. We're right behind Grossman's, so you can actually see our house this time of year. No sidewalks, very narrow. Winter is coming. So my concern is not just for my son, but the families that are moving into our neighborhood, such as my neighbor who just had a baby a couple months ago. When your 10-year plan comes up and you've got those 100 cars in there, that child is 10 years old and getting the bus at the bottom of that street, right where your entrance is, at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, and then coming home at 2:30, 3 o'clock, 3:30, depending on where they are, if they're in the elementary school, middle school, high school. So that's my main concern, is the fact that not only does, my child have to worry about, and other people's children have to worry about the speeding cars and, really be aware. He kind of has that little bit of grass that he can walk along on our neighbors. But come the wintertime, that all goes away. And that's my concern. My concern is having 100 cars coming in and out and our neighborhood kids having to walk home from school or the school bus. And just the safety issue is just absolutely asinine. There's no way, I don't see any way of that working. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next, please?
Hi, my name is Judy Jazz. I live at 5 Willis Street.
And I just wanted to add to what my husband said. There is another street that feeds into this area where the blind curve is. It's called Preston. So you have Preston, you have Willis, you have that sharp turn, which he also was involved in an accident like the gentleman described. Car tried to cut him because you have to take that wide. Ran right into a motorcycle. And that was several years ago. We also have noticed an increase in traffic on our street since Polar has built their buildings. So we've already noticed an increase in traffic very fast down our little street to cut through. It's a very quick way to get up to 146 and the Highway 90. And I did want to mention that. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Chuck Miller, 34 Arlington Street. I agree with what's been said about the traffic at Southbridge and Elmwood, but in a very short time, the employees are going to realize if they take a right, they can get to Packagug Street and get just about anywhere. And I think the last thing you want to do is add another 100 cars to the traffic on Packagug Street and Hampton Street. Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just take a minute. My name's Tony Russo. I own 11 Elmwood Street. I'm new to Auburn. I've only been here a couple of years. When I bought that house, it was in severe state of disrepair. I had to spend over $30,000 before the bank would even give me a mortgage. When I bought it, the realtor told me it was built in 1825. Afterwards, the town told me it was actually 1780. It's one of the oldest buildings in town. It's a 4-chimney building. Every single room is a fireplace. It's on an acre of land. And I look directly at the woods that are there now. It's my only buffer between an ancient house and Southbridge Street. And the freight train and everything else that we deal with. But starting to get used to the train. Love the area, love the neighborhood. I love working on my house. And I actually have had people stop, complete strangers just stop and tell me that they like the improvements to the neighborhood. So 6-8 months ago, when this particular piece of property went up for sale as unbuildable, as someone else mentioned, I scraped together my $10,000 so I could come down and sit in this room. At the time, that lot was valued at $14,000. The bidding didn't get down as far as $50,000, and the bank swooped in, didn't give any of us abutters a chance to buy it. My intention was to buy it to preserve it so that this would not happen. Right after the auction was done, the person that made the bid was standing right over by that table on his cell phone. And I happened to be right next to him and heard him say, which is probably irrelevant, but he said, "Oh no, we don't plan to build on it. We just bought it so that no one else will build on it." And I felt such a sense of relief at that moment. I thought, I'll put my $10,000 back in my pocket and go home happy. And now, 2 weeks ago, this. So, thank you for your time.
Okay, anybody else like to speak? Any other abutters? Okay, yes, sir?
I know I spoke first, but I think we've missed something.
All right, I'll give you 1 minute.
Thank you very much. Many of you may have noticed the current ATM is at quite a distance from the branch, and there's a very large loop around that. There's a significant amount of space that was wasted. There's 3 curb cuts there. Polar, counting the road that was described at 3 sites, has 4. The state's reluctant to give them more for that reason. And isn't there a way to perhaps have entrance and exit not too far away from the branch itself? Someone else mentioned different grading options. You know, what about that space? Maybe the bank, the credit union has made some mistakes in terms of not having planned that far in advance with what was done with the ATM. It's kind of a lonely looking ATM. In fact, in the future, that could be room for still more expansion where that ATM is that they're not telling us about. But I don't know what all has gone on in the background, but I do think there's some food for thought in terms of what's possible as the town continues to look at solutions to this, and as the credit union continues to ponder, how we might find a solution that works for everyone, although it might be a little bit on the expensive side. I certainly would be happy to champion your cause and help to canvas for more members if you've got a real neighborhood-friendly bank. And I think you've helped to waken our neighborhood up to be a little more in communication with each other. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, so I know a couple of people have reserved comment since the abutters have finished. I'll go around the room one more time. Mr. Cussy?
For now, I'm good.
Okay. Mr. Chicolo?
Likewise, right at the moment, I'm good.
Mr. Maron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a follow-up question for the applicant on the diagram. So, on Elmwood, on the Elmwood side, and maybe I'm just not, based on being taxed here, I'm not reading this correct. Is there a planned sidewalk in your proposal?
No, there's not.
All right. Mr. Chairman, I would, after we go through yours and Ms. Blaze's comments, I would wonder if the applicant might want to address anything specific that's been brought up by the abutters. Thank you, sir.
Ms. Blaze?
Wow. So traffic is certainly a concern. It would be my concern. It's definitely is my concern because I drive the streets of Auburn, of course. And right now that area is dangerous. However, the traffic is not before us. It's definitely a problem as part of site plan and stuff like that, but it's not necessarily part of our variances that we're here to approve or not, even though we feel for you and know. But that's not really what our job is here tonight. I would like to maybe see a traffic study. I don't know if they've done that at all, to kind of get through that. But the cuts on Southwood Street, I think, would definitely please a lot more people than on Elmwood Street. I agree. So that's just my comment. Thank you.
Sure. I mean, I really don't have too many, except for the fact that I think you all heard the concerns of the neighborhood tonight. One of the things that we do, at least from my point of view here, is that we'd like to try to support the businesses in the districts that they are appropriately assigned to and vigorously support those businesses, but also because we consider ourselves sort of like pocket neighborhoods because of the highways and intersections, we really try to maintain the integrity of our neighborhoods. I think in this particular case, as far as my personal opinion, the Elmwood Street entrances are something that I have a hard time getting around. I think that as a kid, I rode bicycles up and down those streets. I rode skateboards up and down those streets, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I think that in this particular plan, to me, it's encroaching on our neighborhoods, and especially with all those old houses there. I'm hoping they can come up with some kind of resolution. I recognize the value of this building in the district. I think that there might be a little bit more plan modifications that might be more helpful, and possibly even some more meetings with the neighborhood, if that would be agreeable to all parties. You know, we've had other instances in the past with car dealerships and different things, and they were very helpful. They were accommodating. They met with the neighbors. They hashed out a lot of the things in between our meetings, so they weren't something that was brought up here and tonight. You know, one of the ones I think about is the Ford dealership that's up here being rebuilt. They went out of their way to accommodate the neighbors on Faith Ave, have several meetings with them, reached out to them, expressed their needs. They were literally focused into the plans with that. It was a very successful project as a result. I'm thinking that might be the best way to do it, is if you meet in between our meetings, try to come up with some resolutions, and then we can come up with some type of plan to hopefully accommodate everyone. Any other comments from the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask a question. And the reason there is not the curb cut on Southbridge Street, was that due to terrain? Was it due to cost?
It's due to a combination. It's not cost. It's due to a combination of the topography and the simple fact that Mass Highway, Mass DOT now, I still say Mass Highway, sorry, will not let you send more water to them than they are getting now, and they will not let you make a connection unless they create a new connection. In fact, you even have to justify continuing existing connection. And the problem is that, as we found from soil testing, we've got some depth and appropriate materials at the north end of the site, where we've got down to about elevation 491, we've got before hitting seasonal high groundwater. But in the area of the building, it's at elevation 495. We didn't feel comfortable to try and put a basement floor of the building below that level. That's only a couple feet below the level of the street there. And the problem is, okay, if you're going to make a connection onto Southbridge Street there, you're making a connection, you've got pavement, okay, you have a couple of catch basins. Well, your catch basin pipes are going to be typically 3 feet of cover. The invert of the pipe is 4 feet down. That's in the seasonal high groundwater at that point. You can't infiltrate that groundwater, that stormwater runoff that you catch. So what would you normally do? Well, normally you would make a connection to a street drainage system if you could. But now this is Mass DOT, which is not going to permit that.
What is the connection for the credit union right now?
Right now, that property just sheds water overland to the street, but you only get a very little bit of overland runoff, whereas if you make a paved surface, you're going to get much more. So you have to, in some way, squelch that flow, be it infiltration, or really infiltration is the only way, because you don't have space for a detention basin. And you don't have, and again, unfortunately, you don't have depth except at the north end of the site where we're infiltrating.
So that the Mass Highway, as you state, will not allow you to make another curb cut?
It's not the curb cut. It's that Mass DOT has this 12-page standard operating procedure that they will hand you if you come to them with a drainage issue, which actually almost literally says that our default position is you can't connect. And the only way that you can show that we have to let you connect is if you show that you have no other option that lets you not connect to us. And frankly, this is the other option.
And the curb cut would cause you to have this connection?
Because at that point, you're bringing your pavement down to the existing curb of Southbridge Street, and you're going to have to collect the runoff that's going there. Yeah. And there's just simply no physical way to make that connection and keep the amount of runoff that they're getting below what they're getting now. And if you have a pipe there, where is it going to go? Except into the state highway layout, where they're saying you can't do it unless you show us that you have no other option. And frankly, this is the other option.
Did you pursue that at all?
We had an initial conversation with one of the guys in the permitting department at Mass DOT in the Division 3 office on Belmont Street.
And the answer was no, you haven't?
The question was, are you guys still holding to this standard operating procedure, and you're not going to let anybody do anything except by these rules that you put forth, where again your default position is you can't connect? And he said, yeah, that's still the law of the land as far as Mass DOT is concerned.
Do you have any fail-safe method in place, or potentially in place, where if, due to the feedback that you're getting, so much negative feedback, that your answer is no? Do you have a fail-safe method?
We haven't.
You can employ right now?
Well, we would have answers to some of the, if we realize that there's a strong sentiment here, and we realize that this hearing is going to be continued, and we would have answers to some of the issues raised by the abutters, but at this point we feel it's probably more appropriate just to try and answer the board members' questions and submit additional information to the board before another meeting.
So, if I may, you can see the folks out here in the audience, the folks that maybe still up listening at home, I'm not really sure. But from a board's point of view, it's frustrating because we have a highway business district zoned for that type of building. We would welcome that into town, with the exception of the fact that it's encroaching on a neighborhood in terms of the traffic patterns and flow. Then we have the Mass Highway Department saying, well, you can't tie into Southwood Street.
Yeah.
So for us, it's kind of a rock and a hard place. Is there something we could do
in
on
fact,
your behalf to say, we don't want them to cut into Elmwood Street, so you're going to let them tie in? Does that work? Or is it?
I don't know of that.
Before?
I don't know that that's
We'll
an option.
explore all those options.
Just as some further background, when the credit union building was done, the only reason they were allowed to keep the existing pipe connection is because we got a letter from the licensed site practitioner saying that he didn't think that any other areas on the site should be used for infiltration based on what was in the soil from the former plumbing business. That was the only reason we were even allowed to keep the pipe connection that existed there.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, and this is, perhaps the other board members will benefit from this, but I'm doing this purely selfishly so that I can refocus myself on what's truly before us. And I absolutely respect comments of the abutters. I think the applicant's been thoughtful in their responses, but what I see before us are three setback and one substantial irregularity based on lot request for variance. And as our board often does, is look at the entire scope of what we're responsible for versus what we may defer to planning, because with respect, things such as safety, such as traffic reporting, water runoff, all of the things that we have discussed, I think that sometimes I certainly am only indicting myself, that I weigh into those things more heavily than maybe I should, based on the sensitivity of abutters. But really what our jurisdiction, I think, lies tonight is to take a look at these variances, to take a look at, albeit in totality it seems like a lot, but take a look at these variances and the setbacks that they're requesting within our scope.
Right.
I think that everything that's been brought up is relevant. I think it's thoughtful. I think it's pertinent to review this site, for the intended purpose. But we do have before us a site that is zoned commercial, industrial, and I do, and Caleb, stop me if I'm just going far beyond the coffee verbose, that this is that many of these areas will be addressed directly by site planning.
I would agree. Through the chair, all that's before this board is the variance.
Right, it's the variance for the setbacks, I understand that, but also, obviously, with the folks at home here and the audience concerned, it's a public forum to address that.
I do appreciate the concern. I just want to read what the requirements are for a variance. Before the grant of any variance from the requirements of this bylaw, the Board of Appeals must specifically find that, owing to the circumstances relating to the soil conditions, shape, or topography of the land or structures, and especially affecting such land or structure, but not affecting generally the zoning district, not the neighborhood, the zoning district with which the land falls in. And it does fall in the highway business zoning district.
It does.
And so, Mr. Chairman, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, Commissioner, but from that, I take the heartfelt comments of the neighborhood, and I think that they need to be vetted. But I would suggest, vetting them appropriately, being sensitive to the fact that our jurisdiction relies more narrowly on the review of the variances before us. And so, don't disagree with you at all. And you've always cautiously and very courteously, laid those items before us for our review. And so I think that they should be in consideration, each and every comment. I do applaud the applicant has been stated that their willingness to meet with the neighborhood before this hearing, which I think shows a great deal of appreciation and thoughtfulness on their end to be that neighbor. But I think what's before this board is a bit more narrow, with all due respect.
I agree.
On what we need to accomplish this evening.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would caution everybody here that definition of a variance, there's two more factors that you have to weigh in on. One very important factor, and that's why these people are here, and that is the effect it will have on the town. And we have in the past, I know that's no guarantee of we have everything stand on its own, but the effect that something is going to have on the neighboring people has weighed in significantly in the past. So that you can't just, I mean, topology is the key that's going to unlock the lock for the other factors to come into play, such as financial hardship, as well as effect it will have on the town. But you can't forget about that.
Right. You know, one of the things too, and I'm addressing all folks here, is that, you know, we are residents of the town also, and we have very much a deep concern of maintaining the integrity of the neighborhoods. But I'm wondering if you all understand what it means when, like Mr. Marin, Vice Chair, was speaking about when they are looking for a variance on setbacks. That's really what our decision here is tonight. So it's half a foot here, 20 feet here, 9 feet there, whatever it might be. And so I actually, what Caleb just read, I'm going to kind of go over it again and break it down so you'll understand where our decision comes from. Is mandatory finding before the grant of a variance requirements by this law, the Board of Appeals has to specifically find these things. Owing to the circumstances related to the soil conditions, which I think this gentleman spoke about regarding the drainage issues on the lot, the shape or topography of the land and structure, which again, that odd-shaped triangular lot fits into that granting of a variance. It does not especially affect in such land or structures, but does not affect generally the zoning district in which it is located. So that refers to that building being directly located in a highway business district. A literal enforcement of the provisions of this bylaw would involve substantial hardship, which I think they've addressed, regarding the drainage issues, not being able to tie into the highway departments or the state drainage. And the desirable relief can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without nullifying or substantially derogating from the intent and purpose of this bylaw. You know, so I think what we're trying to tell you here is tonight is that for us to grant these variances means there's several other steps afterwards. Planning Board, Conservation Commission, et cetera, et cetera. We've heard all your concerns and we absolutely understand every one of them. But for us to rule on the variances tonight, the next step would be site plan review, traffic patterns, and that would fall under the Planning Board. So I think you have to kind of be prepared that what we're dealing with tonight is going to be a long-term process to get where you need to be. So that's really where our mandate is. And I want you to understand that before we move forward, that...
I'm sorry, how would we have known that, though?
I'm sorry? Can you step up if you want to...
Yeah. Again, Lisa St. John, thank you for listening. How would we have known what you just told us? We're here like pouring our hearts out, trying to stop something or modify something or change something, and you're telling us thanks for telling us, and I appreciate that, but we can't do anything for you now. So how many steps do we have to look forward to get together as a group again and be able to, because I've never done this. I've lived here 50 years. I've never come in this room.
Right.
So I'm just wondering what we have to do as a community to make sure our voices are heard.
Well, that's why we provided this forum this evening for you, so we can get that this is a public forum. It's been recorded. It's going to be replayed on the public access channel. I guarantee you there's probably some selectmen at home watching this right now, if they're still awake. You know, this is why we provided you with this opportunity.
Okay.
And that's one of the things we've done frequently on this board, because we have the same...
All right, I appreciate that, because what you said made it sound like your issues are narrow, and I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what the boards do, and I don't know that everybody here knows what the boards do. So I guess just figuring out, like, this is part one of several parts.
Right.
I appreciate that.
So let me, if you want to stay there for a minute, if I don't mind, Caleb, would you be so inclined to expand the process a little bit, let them know what the next steps will be?
So if the board did decide to grant variances tonight, the applicant would then have to, they may have already applied to the planning board for site plan review. At that point, the planning board would look at traffic patterns, it would look at impact on the traffic in the neighborhood. It may request a traffic study be done, and anything else. They're gonna look at stormwater, they're gonna look at everything.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, through the chair, so thank you for your comments. This process will evolve, and there are several segments. The applicant will have to navigate each and every one, and recognizing that there are several steps, several questions. And there'll be additional hearings with those other boards, with an opportunity for the abutters, for the neighbors to speak as well. And so we're as you point out, your time, I guess what I want to say is your time here was not wasted. Okay, this is a piece of that process.
Okay.
And anyone look, I don't know all the steps, right? So, we're part of a larger community that helps these things happen appropriately based on our bylaws. And so getting involved, your time, I can assure you, was absolutely not wasted. I hope you feel that way, because without you here...
I do now.
Well, I mean, truly, and this is the value of having you here, and I won't speak for the applicant, but I'm sure that they agree, is that without you here, we're limited to our thoughts. And we don't live where you live. I'm not an abutter in this neighborhood, but I am a resident. So, we're on the board because we care about the town. But without you here, we don't have that voice. So your time certainly wasn't wasted. But I would point out that perhaps narrowing our scope was the wrong term to use, but we're one part of that process. And that process does cover, with other jurisdictions, a lot of those other areas that you spoke to.
Thank you.
Just one more, but you have to go up there, okay? We're getting pretty late here, so they're gonna shut the lights off on us pretty soon.
I'm wondering if you can wait on your variance or postpone or something until the planning board does all these other studies and look at traffic.
It doesn't work that way. In order for them to move forward with their studies, we have to we have to make a decision. If there was a reason that we could say that they did not meet the requirements of the variances, then we could obviously continue with other fact findings, different things like that. But realistically, if we decide tonight what goes on and if we vote in favor of, then the planning board has to decide how they're going to vet this project.
I see.
So if we decide not to move forward, they can't go to the planning board first, then the Conservation Commission, and then, they can't just kind of break it up and go around. They have to follow each procedure, A, B, C, and D. They can't go A, Z, J, B, and jump around.
Okay.
So for them to move forward and you be able to be at the planning board meetings, we have to make a decision tonight whether to grant or deny, and then go from there.
Okay. What I don't understand then about the rule about an irregular piece of land is this isn't a surprise. I mean, they knew that when they bought that land. It's a weird piece of land. It's shaped like a finger or a knife. And they want to do this much with this much land. And I don't know why, I mean, as a teacher, what I'm hearing is a middle school argument. Well, what else could I do? I just got myself into this mess, and here I am, and now I have this big piece of land. I mean, I have this big project and this little piece of land, and, and that's what this feels like. So if you can stop it by not granting variances, I think that'd be great. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would explain to the lady, with all due respect, we have to back up our decision. If we grant or deny a variance, we have to back that up, because the next step after here is Superior Court in Boston. If we cannot back that up, we cost the town an awful lot of money. So that we cannot just say no because I kind of felt that it would be bad. We have to have specific criteria that we either accept or approve or deny.
One thing I would like to see is a peer review of these plans. I mean, would that be Would the planning board request that, or? could we-
Again, that would be through the planning board process.
Yeah, because this, they might come to find out that the drainage does not handle the amount of water.
So, yeah, we dropped off plans at the engineering department and spoke to Mr. Coyle, the town engineer, and he said that they were planning on having an outside peer review of the plans.
Perfect, maybe it'll change everything, you know? I don't know.
Okay.
Through the chair, before we move forward, I just have one comment on the application. The applicant is applying for a variance from 5.3.3 of the bylaw. I don't believe it's necessary. 5.3.3 is the irregularity factor. That speaks to newly created lots and mainly about hammerhead lots.
Okay.
I don't think that would apply to an existing lot that was in creation long before the bylaw.
Thank you.
So you're looking at 533 here, substantial irregularity?
Yeah, if you read the last sentence in that section, provisions of this section shall not apply to lots shown on plans recorded in the Registry of Deeds before May 4th, 1995. Plans shall not be considered to be non-conforming for the purpose of this bylaw.
Yeah. Again, what the building commissioner is talking about here is that for section 5.3.3, substantial irregularity, no lot shall be created, which I think is the key word there, which is substantially irregular in shape for the purpose of the section. So what that means is it's not like the same thing as them buying the lot. It means that they didn't create the lot, they purchased it. And then the last part of it is the provisions of this section shall not apply to lots shown on plans recorded in the Registry of Deeds before May 4th, 95. So it goes back quite a ways.
Mr. Chairman, there's a couple worries about not asking for that variance in regard to the regularity factor. One is that these were two separate parcels before, which we're putting together, and I don't believe that the south boundary is exactly the same as was on the assessor parcel.
Were the two lots previously non-conforming for the irregularity factor?
Yes.
So my determination would be they're not creating anything that wasn't already non-conforming.
Right.
They're actually improving the situation by joining the lots.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay.
I would agree. Mr. Chairman, I would agree with the commissioner, so I would suggest that if we move forward, that we might recommend that they amend the application to remove that request.
Okay. So do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close?
Do I have a second?
I'll second to close.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So I think that if we are going to vote on variances here, they should be, how many do we have here? 1, 2, but we're going to strike 5-4. So really, it's just a variance under section 6.7.1 for the setbacks of the building, correct? Are we all in agreement with that?
That's how I read it, Mr. Chairman, yes.
Okay. So I hope you folks understand that this is what the process is, the beginning and not the end. So we already closed the public hearing. Do you need, is it? Okay, please, do you have a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion to open the public hearing for point of clarification.
All in favor?
Aye.
So it's actually the three variances. It's the one pursuant to 6.71 and then the two front setbacks?
Right.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
But, so realistically, we're striking 5.4, and we are voting under the three variances of...
Through the chair, if you just look at their brief, they have it pretty well laid out. You could probably use that language.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
There is somebody who has been very patiently wanting to say something. I know the public hearing is closed.
All right.
But
This
we
is
can reopen
okay.
it.
So we did reopen it, and this is the last one. You gotta go to the microphone, please. Introduce yourself. Give us your name and address.
My name is Sandy Larrabee. I live at 50 Elmwood Street. I agree with everything that everybody said, and I'm not addressing any of those issues. My question is, we would not have even known at 50 Elmwood Street or 52 or 54 Elmwood Street that this meeting was even happening tonight because we don't live right on the little corner there and didn't get a notice. So if this goes forward to other boards, I want to know how I can be notified to come to the meeting.
So, I mean, honestly, you could contact the town clerk's office and ask to be notified. You wouldn't be part of the formal mailing because it's required buffer of, 300 feet or, 300 feet. But, I mean, certainly you could probably request to be put on the list and they can notify you by email or phone or...
Okay, so we request to be put on the list, and then when there is a meeting, they'll notify us.
And yes, Caleb, you want to add to that?
To add to that, all the agendas are posted on the homepage of the town website.
Yeah, so if you go to auburnguide.com and you go into the building commissioners section of that website.
It's right on the homepage. You don't even have to go
so
to...
right on the homepage? Okay.
Okay, so we'd have to like check it every day to see when you were gonna have a meeting. I mean, several of us that I informed about this meeting only found out about this because one of the neighbors that got the notice was gracious enough to post it on the Auburn site. And it's the only way we found out about this. We didn't know anything about the bank having a meeting because I would have gone to that. And we didn't know anything about this meeting until last night when I was sitting on my couch at 8 o'clock. So that's my concern going forward. I don't live right next to this piece of property, but I'm at 50 Elmwood Street and I watch all that traffic come down the street and all that traffic come up the street. And I know I don't want to rehash all this entrance stuff, but I got the impression that they're assuming everybody's going to pull into the parking lot to this bank building from Southbridge Street, and that's not going to happen. They're going to be coming down Elmwood Street and trying to come into these, and it's going to be just as hazardous. So I want to be a participant of it, so I want to be notified.
Sure. And Caleb?
I can't promise that she'll be notified, but the planning board meets the second and fourth Tuesday of every month. Unfortunately, we can't notify everybody in town when there's a meeting, but it is on the homepage. It's very accessible to look at the agenda and see what's going on at the meetings.
Right.
Okay, will it list will it list that it's this particular subject?
Yes.
It will,
There'll be
okay.
an agenda just like this with all
So
the
you catch
all
that
the
second and
hearings.
fourth Tuesday of the
Second and
month?
fourth Tuesday. Thank you very much.
For those of you who are not formally notified, and if you go to the auburnguide.com, all right, so then there you go. You have community access.
Close public hearing.
Okay, yes, so we are officially closing the public hearing. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion.
All right, there'll be no more further comments from the applicant or the gallery. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Okay, so, voting as such, we are requesting relief of 2 feet from the 40-foot front yard setback per section 5.4 of the zoning bylaw off of Elmwood Street to allow for typical building overhang. And this is really just addressing the overhang. Do I have a motion to grant or deny the variance for the first?
Motion to approve.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the relief of 2 feet from the 40-foot yard setback. Do I have a second?
You're going to take them each as individual one?
We are. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Chicolo, your vote?
Affirmative.
Mr. Cussy? I'll approve. Okay, and I'll approve, so that's one. The second one, we are requesting relief of 22 feet from the 40-foot front setback per section 5.4 of the zoning bylaw off of Southbridge Street. This will essentially be the rear yard of the facility. Do I have a motion for the second part of the variance?
I'll make a motion to grant.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Chicolo? Mr. Cussy?
I deny on that.
You deny on that one? All right. Mr. Cussy denies. And I will vote to approve. We are requesting a 9 feet of relief from the requirement under section 6.7.1 of the zoning bylaw that no parking space shall be located within 10 feet of the lot line. In this case, they are moving it closer to Southbridge Street. Do I have a motion to approve or deny part 3 of the variance?
I'll make a motion to grant.
Okay, do I have a second? Ms. Blaze? Okay. Mr. Chacolo?
Approve.
Mr. Cussy?
I deny.
Mr. Cussy denies. And I will make a motion to approve. We are also requesting relief from 0.72 from the requirement under section 5.333.
Through the chair, that's the one we discussed
Oh,
about
that's
the
the one we're gonna
relative.
strike. Okay. So we struck that one. Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, to that point, do we need to request that the application be amended, or do we do that through this approval process?
We can make it a condition, I believe, right? Have the application amended to strike that one last one?
It's a point of process.
We can do that right here.
Yeah, you can do it right here, strike it as long as the applicant's agreeable. I think we can strike it from the application.
Okay.
And do we want to offer that choice to the applicant?
Yes. So again, if the attorney could step up. So for the point of clarification that we had talked about earlier, that one last section, which was requesting relief from the 0.72 from the requirement of section 533 by the property's perimeter, such a ratio that the irregularity factor be designed by at least 0.40. We're basically going to strike that one, if that's fine with you.
From the application. That's acceptable.
Yep, okay. And then we have the last one, which I believe we have to talk about is, oh no, we have that one. 671 was the 9 feet of relief from the requirement under 671 the zoning bylaw that no parking space. Okay, so those are the 3 variances that we had to address, and they are addressed. So folks, I appreciate your understanding and coming forward with the process, but the next step for all of you is to hit the planning board meetings. Okay? The motion to close the hearing.
Motion to close the hearing.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Wait a minute.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, there was one.
Thank you.
11-2, the little meeting for the schools.
Through the chair.
I get it, but I think...
Through the chair, we have minutes from 11:2 just to approve.
We'll let these guys clear out and we'll hit those quick.
Lady here. Marvelous job with the property.
Yeah.
Marvelous job.
It's going to be at the point to reduce it. When they tell them that is it feasible based on traffic, and that's my visceral thought. But I agree with you, and I respect that. But the voting conscience and say, is it
Just safety.
that's too big?
She had a manufacturer. So they did, from the outside, it looked fabulous job.
Her family's been there for like, I remember we did.
Yes.
Yeah, we built this, split that lot up.
Yeah,
the way it needed to be.
she was like all over the place with different things. Thank God it all worked out, but she wasn't even up there that long petitioning for it either. I'd like to find out who she
This
used
is one of
for a
those I need to
company.
go home and brush my teeth because I feel like it's dirty. Because it's really tough when I look at it. I almost.
I'm sorry? Yeah, folks, if you wouldn't mind, excuse me? If you guys wouldn't mind, we're trying to wrap the meeting up and we have to close the town hall. No, we are, but we have to kind of move along. Thank you.
And everything they said is true.
Usually they don't hire only the people that they have in Shrewsbury because they stated that they're.
Okay, so we have minutes to approve. May I, please? All right, so we have the minutes from 11/2/17 to approve as written and submitted. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve as written.
Second.
I'm sorry?
Minutes from 11-2, not 11-17.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, 11/2/17.
Oh, sorry.
Right, yeah, that's okay.
We're tired.
We're all tired, it's way past my bedtime.
As corrected, I still make the motion to approve as written.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. There you go, thank you. We signed everything. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
To adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.